A man with long blonde hair turns to the girl and coldly says that he is dead tired and deeply disappointed in her. The girl is sobbing, sitting on the floor, and the man declares that she is not his daughter and has never meant anything to him. The child desperately insists that he is still her father, admits his mistake, blames himself for everything, and begs him not to leave. The girl trembles with excitement, cries and asks not to leave her, vows to become a good daughter, and again begs for forgiveness. But after a few minutes, she no longer understands what she's apologizing for. Looking at her hands, she freezes. They're covered in red paint. The man claims she begged for Ophelia to be put into eternal sleep in her place and demands an answer. The girl denies this and says she only wanted to become Ophelia, his true daughter. The man screams and declares that she has crossed the line. The girl doesn't understand why he says this or why her body moves on its own. The master orders her to live as if she were dead, otherwise he will not be able to tolerate her anymore, and then leaves. The child looks around the room, confused as to how she ended up there. Looking at her hands again, she thinks this can't be happening, and that perhaps she's already fallen into eternal sleep. The main character recalls how Pak Doi was once adopted by the owner of a conglomerate whose name everyone knew. Leaving the orphanage and getting into a luxury foreign car, she trembled with happiness. At this time, the girl knocks on the door with her fists and calls for help, admitting that she was wrong and made a mistake. As a result, the main character ends up locked up and spends 120 days in complete darkness, not seeing anything around her. Suddenly, a woman in a strange hat opens the door and tells the girl to be silent, because she will have to take on the bad luck of the family's youngest daughter. Only then does the heroine realize her fate. She had the misfortune of being born similar to Sulandipo's terminally ill daughter, and was adopted to serve as a facilitator for her illness. The lady recalls living like this for 10 years, locked in darkness and filled with despair. The only people she could talk to were the shamans and scholars who occasionally visited her. She only managed to escape when she grew up, or rather, she was thrown out when she became useless. Standing on the street with a small travel bag, the heroine thought that she could finally live like everyone else and be a person, not an instrument. But everything became clear the moment she had the accident. It all happened in a matter of seconds. In her final moments, she realized that the Park family had long ago decided to put her into eternal sleep by staging a car accident. The heroine realizes that if she leaves like this, she will not get to the afterlife, because the resentment will overwhelm her and force her to wander through the heavens forever. The little girl remembers everything, up until the moment she stopped breathing, but she doesn't understand what's happening. Just 5 minutes ago, she was an adult. Memories begin to fill her mind, and she realizes that she is in the body of Bunny, born in a slum called The Dump. Spriyadesh recalls how she once attracted the attention of the Grand Duke Krendel, who is considered a hero here. It was because of her appearance, which was strikingly similar to Ophelia Kreddle, his youngest daughter, that he decided to adopt her. The Grand Duke abandoned his real daughter and took a false one, so that she would take upon herself Ophelia's deadly curse. In this world, curses are real. They are cast by evil mages using forbidden techniques. Seeing the mark on her hand, Bunny realizes she received it instead of Ophelia, without even knowing what it means. When the girl turns 18, the curse will work. Everything will return to normal, and the real daughter will return to the family. At this moment, the heroine realizes that she has ended up in Bunny's body, because their lives are frighteningly similar. But she still doesn't understand what happened to the real Bunny and the situation she found herself in. The heroine decides she knows what to do. She doesn't want to be used and discarded again, as she was in her past life, and she understands she must get out of here. She reflects on the fact that she must remove the curse before she comes of age, before it completely consumes her body, and she has no other choice. Bunny realizes that the Park family did teach her something: physiognomy, the ability to read character and destiny by appearance. The heroine is in the western tower of Duke Kredel's castle and, opening the window, wonders why she ended up in this particular era. The western tower is a prison for guilty nobles. It's abandoned now, and the girl is alone. Looking down, she realizes the jump is hopeless. She believes that if she had entered Bunny's body earlier, things wouldn't have gone so far. Because of the curse, the Duke was forced to say goodbye to his beloved daughter, and Bunny was caught trying to change her fate. Growing up in a dump, Bunny was rude, often stole, and earned contempt. After reflecting on this, the heroine understands the abyss she's found herself in. She wonders if she is destined to be a loser, locked in a tower until she grows up. Bunny is only 10, which means she still has 8 years of imprisonment ahead of her. The girl understands that determination alone is not enough. Without the ability to take action and meet people, all this is pointless. Bunny thinks that even though chaos reigns in the slums, at least there is freedom there, and decides to demand the removal of the seal and leave the castle. Suddenly, the door swings open, and a man shouts, asking if she has been stealing, and grabs her roughly. From his broad, clear forehead, the girl understands that he comes from a wealthy family. The scar on his eyebrow speaks of a difficult childhood and separation from his family. His strong jawline and stern features exude courage and stubbornness. His gaze is so full of energy that it seems his eyes are glowing. A high, rounded nose, even teeth and sharp fangs, hair like a lion's mane. Despite his youth, he is strong and resilient. The lady understands that he acts on instinct and rushes into battle immediately. His intuition is strong, but his brutal nature could be his undoing. The heroine thinks that if he became a military man, he could rule the world, and recognizes in him the second son of the Credle family, Silver. Bunny remembers how he behaved before, and how he threatened her. The girl, surprised, asks what exactly she stole. Silver sarcastically accuses her of feigning innocence. He asks who else but her would dare to touch Ophelia's brooch, and the girl does not understand what he is talking about. The heroine denies the theft and recalls that, according to Bunny's memory, it is true. Silver angrily asks if she has forgotten how he threatened to put her into eternal sleep. He lets her go, and the girl falls. Silver gives her exactly 1 day, or a slave brand will appear on her neck. He assures that it will cost him nothing to do this, and calls this his last warning. The heroine remembers that Ophelia gave him the brooch that Silver always wore before leaving. The girl realizes her suspicions are well-founded. Bunny was a skilled thief, and even at 8 years old was stealing things from Ophelia's chambers. She was caught and locked in the tower. It turns out the brooch was the only thing she could steal while locked up. Silver had been keeping an eye on Bunny for a long time, like a warden watching a criminal, and it seems that the brooch may have disappeared right from him. The heroine thinks that the real criminal understands their relationship perfectly. Sitting in the room, the girl does not understand who is knocking so late. The maid pushes food through. Bunny thinks that if she sees the new arrivals, she'll get a clue. She runs up and knocks over the bowl of soup. The maid screams and calls for the maid, Melissa. The maid calls Bunny a crazy demoness and tells her to keep quiet. Bunny realizes that these are Ophelia's loyal servants, the only ones who know the truth and have not taken a vow of silence. Duke Credle left them in case of Ophelia's return, which speaks of his boundless love for his daughter. Because of this, Bunny suffered constant humiliation. The maid asks if she understands her situation. The maids say that without them she would die of hunger and mock her ingratitude. The heroine thinks it's soup made from wet rags, but they talk about it with delight. Melinda declares that since the soup is spilled, Bunny will go hungry today and advises him to go back to begging. Bunny assesses Melinda's physiognomy and sees signs of poverty, anger, and unhealthy envy. The heroine understands that this woman's fate is poverty and eternal discontent. The maid asks irritably why Bunny is looking at her like that. Emma tries to calm her down, and Melinda mocks her, asking who she is protecting. Melinda states that Bunny has nowhere to run from Duke Credle. Emma objects, saying that Bunny is Ophelia's only hope, but Melinda thinks she is too kind. Closing the door, the maid pushes the girl to the floor and forbids her to stick her head out. Emma sadly apologizes for not being able to help. Left alone, Bunny says that she now knows who the criminal is. Late at night, Silver and the maids enter the room. He mocks her, and the heroine realizes she's dying of hunger and can't get up. Bunny says she's found the culprit, but Silver is sure she's faking it. The girl thinks that he is only 12, he is strong, but he trusts his instincts too much. Bunny understands that recognition takes experience. Silver shows her the brand again and gives her a day. He displays a magical scroll that leaves a mark of slavery on the neck. Silver says that with a seal like that, she can't disobey and pushes her again. The heroine understands that he is impatient and will not back down from his decision. She fights off the maids, and Silver decides to handle it himself. Bunny realizes this is her last chance and points to the maid, claiming she stole the brooch. The girl recalls that, according to her physiognomy, Emma is prone to envy and theft. She notices her fidgety gaze and tilted head, a sign of living one day at a time. Physiognomy allows us to see a person as a whole, his mind and attitude to life. Emma asks, confused, what Bunny is talking about. The heroine understands that physiognomy reflects the essence, and Emma does not try to change it. Emma says she doesn't even know what the brooch looks like and asks what she did to offend Bunny. Melinda defends Emma, calling the accusation ridiculous. She tells Silver that Emma was the best to Bunny. Bunny offers to search Emma's room and promises to accept the brand if nothing is found. Emma claims that she is not guilty of anything. The heroine understands that he will not back down without evidence. Bunny says that Emma is Ophelia's servant and asks if he will allow the thief to be near his sister. The girl notices how his gaze changes when Ophelia is mentioned and says that a check wouldn't hurt. Milady says that Madame Ophelia is gentle and merciful and will definitely hide the truth, protecting Emma, even if she really is a thief. Hearing this, Silver realizes something doesn't add up. He's alarmed by the girl's calm and the despair that has vanished from her gaze, as if she's become a different person. The young master turns to the maid and orders her to take him to her chambers. Emma immediately denies the accusations, but the gentleman insists and demands to be taken there immediately, while he asks nicely. Silver tells Betty to get up and orders the knights to wait outside the maid's room. At this point, the heroine is dizzy from hunger, but she gathers her remaining strength. Betty says that Melinda is two-faced and talkative, easily carries secrets beyond the castle walls, and knows about Ophelia's curse, which means she cannot be left here any longer. Milady adds that the third maid is a con artist by nature and is probably using the Cradell family name for her own gain. Betty suggests that Silver conduct a full investigation if he doesn't believe her. A few minutes later, Silver orders Emma thrown into prison and shouts that his mother's earrings disappeared 3 years before Bunny appeared, meaning she couldn't be guilty. At this moment, he realizes that a simple maid was trying to deceive him, cleverly copying her manner of speech and behavior. Silver realizes that the maid knew that he would suspect Bunny first and took advantage of this. He orders that an investigator be called, that a confession be obtained, and that all the maids, their past, connections, and reputations be checked. Looking at the girl, Silver thinks that she could have died, but hearing her breathing, he decides that it would be a pity to lose her after everything he went through for Ophelia. He rudely calls her trash and tells her to stop pretending, after which the heroine falls to the floor. Silver picks her up and is surprised by how light she is. She's skin and bones. Her clothes are nothing but rags. He thinks that after 2 years in the mansion, she looks even worse than before. Looking around the room, he notices cobwebs and the pitiful remains of food. At this moment, the heroine recalls her grandmother's words that physiognomy is not fortune-telling, but a science based on knowledge and history. Her grandmother, the fortune-teller, was her mentor, supporter, and only source of strength. She said that the times of the Joseon dynasty had passed, but the essence of the world had not changed. Grandmother taught that the basis of predictions is the universe and the movement of its energy. The heroine thinks that the other world and the body do not change anything because here too there is a sun, moon, and seasons. Betty understands that the principles of the universe are immutable and that life and immersion into eternal sleep are like her eternal circle. A person's energy is reflected on their face, and this is what is called physiognomy. The heroine realizes that her grandmother's lessons proved invaluable. Lying in bed, Bunny feels pain and heat, her body is throbbing, and there is no help to be found. Milady lies without strength, and her soul seems to scream in the void. She doesn't understand whether this is due to the child's body or the fact that it is someone else's, and she drives away meaningless thoughts. Bunny thinks that there is still no help, no matter how far it reaches. Suddenly, she feels a touch on her hand and, opening her eyes, sees Duke Cradell. The world was once on the brink of collapse due to demonic monsters, until one hero crushed the Demon King with a silver blade and icy power. The sorcerers were exiled to the north, and the hero and his brother founded the Empire of Abyssus. The emperor was compared to the sun, and the Grand Duke to the moon, bringing light into the darkness. Thus, the Cradell family became known as the Blue Moon Craddells, and gained enormous influence. The girl looks at the Duke and thinks that for her he is not a hero at all, but a deceiver. Bunny remembers the first time she saw him at the trash heap and didn't dare refuse. Lying in bed, she says that he means nothing to her. Feeling him let go of her hand, she thinks it's a dream. After all, he himself told her to live as if she were dead. The next day, she wakes up with a feeling of lightness and freshness throughout her body. Opening his eyes, Bunny sees a man with noble features and a calm gaze. The perfect posture and long legs reveal the energy of a tree and the clear mind of a scientist. His cold features and sharp gaze make him look distant and dangerous. He looks like a lonely pine tree hiding the fangs of a wolf. The heroine realizes that in front of her is Angelus, the eldest son of Cradell, and assumes that he used his power. We are talking about the hereditary powers of the blue blood of the Abyssus Empire. The Duke wields ice, while Angelus wields healing. She assumes that he cured her, but the guy coldly replies that it is none of his business. Angelus orders not to bother him with trifles anymore. The heroine recalls that before he didn't even help when Bunny was bleeding. Getting up, she realizes that she is in Ophelia's room. Angelus warns against imagining that she has taken her place. The girl thinks that she doesn't care and says that she's not deceiving herself. Angelus advises to be honest and not consider yourself part of the family. He says that she threw out Ophelia's maids and imagined herself to be the mistress of the world. Bunny replies that she only learned about her dismissal from him and that the maids falsely accused her. Angelus notes that the accusations may not have been entirely false. The heroine understands that her past will always be a shadow and asks if he knows how she was treated. Angelus replies that he knows, and this amazes her. He says that they decided to compensate for the damage with a reward, and she understands why she was cured. The heroine just wanted to talk, but everyone in the Cradell family is trying to hurt her. She thinks it's a good thing the real Bunny won't have to go through this again. Angelus reports that her father has allowed her to stay in the main palace. The girl understands why she woke up in Ophelia's room, and considers it madness. She realizes that she will now be perceived as Ophelia's replacement. The heroine reminds us of the reward that Angelus mentioned. He says that her desire is obvious, but it is impossible to replace Ophelia. Angelus forbids calling him brother. The girl replies that she didn't intend to, and he is surprised. She understands that she will live in the main palace, but she hates it and does not intend to tolerate humiliation. Bunny thinks that warmth and luxury will come at a price. She realizes that she will be watched, and Angelus is already doing so. As a reward, she asks to be released from the Grand Duchy. Angelus doesn't understand this move and doubts whether she is the same bunny. He smiles and says he wishes she could succeed. Deep down, he thinks she's stupid and can barely contain himself. Milady says she is glad that they share the same views. She states that only the Duke can make the decision and asks for a meeting. Angelus thinks that all that awaits her is the road back to the dump. He is sure that she will return soon, begging him to stay. Angelus decides it's time for him to go to his office. Walking along the corridor, the heroine is surprised that she knows the way, remembering the secret passage. She thinks about how Bunny only used her talents to steal, but she doesn't understand why she's the only one to blame. After all, enlightenment never came for the inhabitants of the landfill, and survival requires cruelty. Bunny was like this from birth and was not going to change instantly. She just wanted to be loved the same way. But the Cradle family did not forgive her, although everything could have been different. Entering the Duke's office, the heroine thinks that he didn't even look at her. He asks what she is doing here, and she is glad that she was not thrown out. Bunny thanks him for letting her stay, but says she doesn't need it. The Duke is surprised and angry, squeezing the pen in his fingers. He asked again what she said. The girl thinks that he has always been indifferent to her. His appearance is perfect, like the mask of a blue moon hero. Despite the wars, his skin is flawless, like that of a deity. Messenger of heaven, blessing the earth with his steps. The heroine finds it funny to hear praise for his kindness. She looks into his eyes, the color of lifeless water, like a dry riverbed. The hero's glow had long since faded, leaving a void, and she couldn't understand how anyone could remain alive with such an aura. The Count looks at the girl and dryly reminds her that he asked her a question. She replies that she would like to offer him a different option. She explains that now that his daughter's curse has transferred to her body, she no longer has any reason to remain here. And since it's because of her that Lady Ophelia can't return to the Cradle family castle, it's obvious. Milady says that's why she's asking to be sent back to the slums. She promises to disappear from his sight so he can live again with Madame Ophelia. The Count coldly asks her why she even thinks that. The girl replies that she's heard similar things from people around her many times. Betty explains that if the cursed person and the curse bearer are too close, there's a risk of the curse returning. That's why Lady Ophelia lives away from the castle. The Count asks who told her this. The girl thinks it might just be rumors, but she realizes the castle's inhabitants believe it, and so the Cradle brothers have resigned themselves to her presence. The man looks at her and tells her not to take it seriously because it's all a lie. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes everything is falling apart. She had hoped to appeal to his paternal feelings and propose a reunion with Ophelia. The girl asks why Madame Ophelia was sent so far from the castle. The Count replies that it is none of her business. At that moment, she realizes that he is not going to share important information with Bunny, even though she took the blow instead of his daughter. Milady says she's willing to take a vow of silence and agree to be observed. She insists there's no need to send her to the dump, as he can exile her anywhere outside the empire he wishes. The man tells the girl to return to her room and says he's made the best choice for his daughter. She's here, Ophelia is there, and that won't change anytime soon. Betty feels like she's talking to a wall. One word from him would have been enough to send her out of the castle, but now she'll have to stay in this hell forever. She looks at the Count and notices that his eyes reveal complete indifference. There's boredom in that look, and such a man would never empathize with someone else. Milady reflects that the Count doesn't show open hostility, but he's just as irritating as the other Cradelles. The Duke has never shown any warmth or desire to care for Bunny, and that's what irritates her most. The girl approaches him with gratitude for the chance at a better life for a man of humble origins. She admits that he dislikes her, and that she did indeed steal Lady Ophelia's things. She asks if he could meet her halfway just once. The man only replies that she is safe here. Milady says she sees no difference between the slums and Chateau de Cradel. She thinks it's even worse here, since you could escape from the dump, but not from here. The girl says she doesn't want to go hungry anymore, doesn't want to endure unfounded accusations, and doesn't want to fall down the stairs because of someone else's fault. She doesn't want to live like this anymore. She doesn't notice how the Count comes closer and wipes away her tears. The girl thinks he expected her to cry in front of him. A man with long, blonde hair reports that Ophelia has contracted an infection and is in quarantine. She will return to the castle after she is fully recovered. The Count tells her to lie down and rest, because even divine power won't help without sleep. Hearing this, the girl believes he was the one who ordered Angelus to heal the fake. Betty realizes she's had enough and tells the Count that she understands everything. Leaving the office, she thinks it's good that the Count made his feelings clear. Bunny is merely a tool to lift the curse, and the Blue Moon family has opened up to her completely. The girl decides that if the role of a false daughter is expected of her, she will play it. She will be obedient and motionless, as if immersed in eternal sleep, because that's how she lived before. She thinks that if he takes his eyes off the nameless instrument, it will disappear without a trace and return the curse to its rightful owner. As soon as Bunny starts thinking about what's next, her composure returns. She decides to take things step by step and figure out how to escape. The girl wonders if there is a way to escape the Grand Duke's pursuit and regrets that she cannot use magic. She comes to a large tree and starts searching for something, wondering how the grass managed to grow so much. She thinks she should have taken a shovel. The thing she was looking for is found, and she remembers that Bunny stole it back when she was living in the junkyard. It was a magical artifact. The crook who forced Bunny to steal loved to brag about this thing at every opportunity. The girl thinks Bunny was a true genius for being able to steal from the thief himself. She hopes the magic within her will help at least a little. Milady examines the artifact, not understanding how it works. Suddenly, it falls, and a strange voice echoes in her head. Betty thinks that, since she only has one earring of the pair, perhaps she can use it to contact the owner of the other one. She feels uneasy, because the swindler said he stole the earring from the palace. She consoles herself with the thought that no one was looking for it. The girl hears a voice asking who she is. It's quiet, childish, and very pleasant. The sound of her voice confirms her physiognomic analysis. It is clear, even, and confident, despite its owner's age. Milady understands that even a few words are enough to attract attention. She states her name and is answered by a question about the rabbit. The girl objects and says that it is her name, wondering who even called her that. Bunny hears that the boy waited 8 years for an answer and got some kind of rabbit instead. She understands that he is still just a baby, and she can hardly contain her laughter. A voice asks where she got the earring. She replies that it came to her by accident, and then hears a question about the time. Bunny explains that the earring was stolen 2 years ago and that it had changed many owners before her. The voice hesitates and asks why he should believe it. Milady replies that it's his choice and says that waiting 8 years with no guarantees is pure torture. The boy says he waited patiently, thinking they were playing the silent treatment on him, but it turned out they simply didn't hear him. The girl thinks that earrings for communication are like a sign of someone's love. 8 years ago, the war had just ended, and peace was fragile, so the owner of the second earring either fell into eternal slumber or lost it. The boy says that he decided not to look for this man, perhaps because he simply forgot about them. From the intonation, the girl understands that the second option is the most likely, and that the boy knows who his father is. The young gentleman says that it is all over for him, and this man means nothing. The protagonist understands the boy's emotions to speak like that. She senses that he has long since lost hope. Betty decides to keep the earring and tells him he'll have to find another way to communicate. She says that's the end of the conversation. Suddenly, the boy screams and asks to wait, and not to break the connection. The girl understands that he's just an 8-year-old child who's been waiting for a miracle his whole life. She senses that his family history is complex and doesn't want to delve into it. She asks why he doesn't cut off the connection and invites him to talk, promising to listen. The boy asks her not to throw away the earring and fall silent. The girl thinks he cut off the connection himself, and she was worried for nothing. Betty realizes that the artifact is useless and seals it away forever. Suddenly, she hears Silver's voice calling her trash. He asks what she's doing there and says he's not surprised by her strange behavior. Silver looks under the tree and asks what the hole is, claiming that she was trying to hide something. The girl replies that she was looking for food. The guy is surprised, and she realizes she said the first thing that came to mind. Silver asks if she eats dirt now. The girl replies that she ate grass. The young gentleman cries out that she is sick, because in the north most herbs are poisonous. Hearing this, the girl realizes she didn't know about it. She says she ate something similar at the dump, and it tasted fine, though it gave her a stomachache. Silver orders food prepared, leads her into the kitchen, and tells her to eat it all. She looks at the table and thinks she wouldn't see so much food in a year. He orders to eat everything, and says that he will check later. Betty realizes that she is unable to eat such fatty foods, and thinks that this is a new form of violence. She consoles herself with the thought that any crisis can become an opportunity, because the line between good and bad is too thin. The girl takes the bell, and soon a maid comes in. Milady asks for the food to be carried to the dining room. The maid asks about the main hall, but the girl orders everything to be taken to the servants' dining room, realizing that she won't be able to eat it alone. Betty knows that servants are allowed to take their master's food. She says she'll only eat the soup, and the rest can be taken. The cook notices that the food is untouched. She suggests calling the night shift and reheating the rest in the morning. The maid says the food was ordered, especially for her. The girl asks how she's supposed to eat it all alone after her illness. She says that the maid is seeing her in person for the first time and suggests that she consider this a gift for her future care. The maid can't believe it and thinks the young mistress asked for the servants to be fed. Otherwise, why feed her such heavy food? The maid reasons that the cooks would not have tried so hard for the servants and decides that Milady simply covered for them. The maid cries out that she understands everything and promises to pass on the message. The girl says she can handle it. Betty notices her wide eyebrows, large mouth, and neat lips, realizing that she is naive but diligent. She thinks that the maid is pure at heart, although she is as trusting as a child. The girl decides to treat her to dessert for her help. She remembers that she still took the artifact with her and decides to think about it later. Lying in bed, the girl hears a noise and sees a young gentleman who orders her to wake up. Betty asks if he's crazy. He asks if she has anything else to say. She thinks she should thank him for waking her up, because he entered her room without asking. Milady asks if he waited for her to wake up. He says he just arrived. The girl turns away and says that he has a firm intention. The young gentleman asks if she watches her behavior and says that her father did not hear the sincerity in her words. Betty thinks she's tired, but she can't show it. She needs to stay here until she finds a way to escape. She says her request was likely rejected, as if it were just a sign of dissatisfaction. She explains that she had been in the tower for a long time and was glad to have the opportunity to stay. The girl says that she wanted to get out of the castle so much that she misspoke and decides to give in to Silver, watching his reaction. Milady realizes that by continuing, he realizes his mistake. She says she has no other place to stay. Betty thinks that even under the insults, she continued to speak because he considered the compensation sufficient. She says that she will be obedient and become a perfect copy of Madame Ophelia without tarnishing the name of Cradell. The girl adds that she would like to sometimes be able to freely go outside the castle. The young gentleman does not understand why he sees in her the image of a kind girl asking permission to go out, as if Ophelia were in front of him. Silver pushes these thoughts away and reminds herself that she is not his sister. He wonders who this girl really is, and what will happen after Ophelia returns. The guy doesn't understand why she suddenly became so calm, because it doesn't inspire confidence. He says this is the last time he'll trust her. She's surprised, because he never trusted her before. Silver reports that he heard that Ophelia's maids embezzled her money. The main character is surprised, not understanding when Bunny even managed to get them, and asks what money they are talking about. The guy explains that he is talking about the monthly benefits of 200,000 fests that she received over the course of 2 years. Hearing this, the main character was genuinely surprised. According to her calculations, for that kind of money, she could buy a small mansion in the center of the capital in 2 years. She can't believe that all this was simply given to the maids, and she feels like they're making fun of her. The protagonist realizes that Bunny has been isolated from everyone and effectively abandoned. She asks the guy who exactly sent the money. The young gentleman replies that his mother is responsible for the budget. She is kind-hearted and very worried about everything that happened. The girl realizes that the Grand Duchess was practically a saint. After Ophelia's mother and her brothers were plunged into eternal sleep, she became the Duke's second wife. Having spent her entire life in the temple, she likely knew nothing until the very end. Silver says the maids have obviously caused her a lot of trouble, and he's here primarily for her reward. He adds that if she needs anything, she can ask for anything. Hearing this, Bunny understands why he waited so long. Every time he spoke, it got on her nerves. The guy says that she can ask for whatever she wants, but only once, after which he strokes her head. Milady pushes his hand away and apologizes, then asks him to take it away. The girl looks at him and thinks he clearly didn't expect such a refusal. It was obvious to her, and she can't understand how he could have even thought she'd like something like that. If she were a real bunny, she would have burst into tears of happiness by now. The main character tells the young gentleman that she does not need useless things that mean nothing to her. She declares that she has no intention of playing family with him and reminds him that she will never call him Big Brother, and she doesn't think she ever will. Bunny asks Silver if she can say what she wants. He allows her to speak. Milady explains that since she's going to be Princess Ophelia's replacement, she needs a decent budget to match the role. However, she thinks she's essentially just asking for the money without any strings attached. A few days later, a large sum of money arrives in her account. Angelus Credel signs the payment and hands over a confirmation document. The young gentleman adds that a substantial sum will now be allocated each month for her proper upkeep. The girl is delighted to realize that he has truly kept his word. Silver looks at her and asks why she looks like that. She replies that now she can rest easy and not worry about the delicious food, at least. The main character believes that if she saves enough money, she can escape and build a huge castle on a remote island. To avoid surveillance and cash out the money undetected, she'll have to resort to trickery, and she doesn't know how much she can spend. The lady looks at Angelus and thinks that this man cannot be deceived. The young gentleman says he'll take about a month off next year to recuperate. He advises her to simply stay out of trouble, as they'll resume training afterward. Bunny looks at him and thinks she doesn't understand why he grumbles like an old man, even though he's only 14. He appears suddenly, like a storm, and disappears just as suddenly. The girl remembers that there is still a month before training, and decides to go to the Grand Duke's office to read some books. The main character reflects that if she were to have a mentor, like in her past life, she should start preparing in advance. For Bunny, she's mature and smart enough, even though she's only 14. Suddenly, Milady hears a voice asking if she's there. She looks at the artifact and hesitates to answer, as it would be more logical to simply ignore it and not be distracted by this child. A strange boy claims she dumped him, and he knew it. The lady thinks that if that's the case, what difference does it make? The voice happily says that means she didn't throw it away. The lady confirms this and says she sees no point in throwing away the earring, since it belongs to her. If she did, the boy would have no way to contact the one he was waiting for. The guy sighs and asks what this has to do with her. At that moment, the protagonist thinks that perhaps it would have been easier to bury the earring by the road. She asks why he called her. He replies he just wanted to see if she was there. Then she asks about his voice, which sounds robotic, but he insists she imagined it. Milady thinks the timbre is definitely different. His voice had made a strong impression on her during their last conversation, and now she can hear the difference clearly. The girl realizes something has happened. She briefly considers asking, but hesitates, realizing it will be difficult for him to answer. The protagonist recalls that in her past life, suppressing her emotions was a habit. Pretending everything was fine became natural for her, and she realizes that it's also difficult for him to express his feelings. Besides her, there's no one else who will listen to him anyway. Bunny says she's lonely too, with no one to talk to and nothing to do. She has a lot of free time, and if he wants to say something, he can do so anytime. There was no response, and the girl thought he'd gone completely silent. She recalled that he'd been much more talkative during their first conversation. Milady says the weather is nice today and asks if he's outside. He replies that the sun has already risen. Hearing this, the main character suddenly realizes how long ago it rose. The boy says the sky is blue. The girl agrees, adding that it's clear and unobstructed, without a single cloud. The boy notices a cloud that looks like a rabbit. The girl says it must be her, and then the voice falls silent. She explains that he himself asked if she was a rabbit. The guy replies that he didn't mean a real one. Bunny thinks about how long it has been since she last felt this calm and peaceful. The voice says that soon night will come again, and it will be like this tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, without end. Milady asks him if the night seems scary and endless. The boy replies that he doesn't like the dark and admits that it does frighten him. Bunny says you can see a rabbit in the winter night sky if you look closely. If you connect the stars, they turn into people, objects, and animals, even a rabbit. The main character says you can't escape the darkness, even by closing your eyes. Fear only makes it bigger and stronger. The lady recalls her growing thirst for knowledge. Physiognomy, numerology, astronomy. In a room with curtained windows, she studied the stars. She remembers being afraid of the dark and trying to overcome it. At night, she would open her eyes and gaze at the sky, where the bright moon and countless stars seemed to stretch downwards, and there she found a small rabbit. The boy says that this rabbit is really tiny. The girl suggests finding him in winter, explaining that it will be difficult. The rabbit resembles her, and she watches him from the sky. Hearing this, the boy laughs. The girl realizes he's simply being obedient and feels happier than she expected. This conversation with an unknown child helps her forget her situation. No one interrupts them, and she understands that life doesn't require catering to other people's opinions or enduring their views. The main character thinks she can be herself around him and not pretend. She says she's just trying to lift his spirits and offers to continue being her companion, as before. The girl understands that if they continue to communicate, one day he will open up and tell her what happened to him. Milady looks at the earring and thinks it's strange. First he contacts her, and then he builds a wall between them. Bunny says she won't let him disappear because he's a cutie. At that moment, a rock thrown by other kids suddenly flies at the boy. They call him a pathetic wretch and laugh at him for not even screaming. Another says he's not human and can't speak. A fair-haired boy screams that it's because of him that his mother ended up in the slums. Another adds that he goes hungry every day because of him. The boys declare that he put Annie into eternal sleep and therefore must be put into eternal sleep himself, after which they throw stones at him again. Seeing this, the black-haired boy rises from the ground. The attackers immediately scatter, calling him a beast and a monster. He looks at his fist and thinks that if he were to fight them, he would become their assassin. Then he wonders if he really is the monster everyone thinks he is. A clash of daggers, piercing screams, and wails of pain. If you curl up on the street, no one will care whether you're alive or immersed in eternal sleep. The boy looks at the sky and says he hates the darkness because he doesn't know what he's capable of in total darkness. He feels like he's truly becoming the monster they call him, and he can't contain his rage. He remembers the girl's words about seeing a rabbit in the night sky. The dark-haired boy looks up and notices that the rabbit-shaped cloud has disappeared. He realizes that the stars won't disappear like the clouds, and he eagerly awaits winter. Meanwhile, the protagonist reflects on how the book's contents differ greatly from what her mentor Bunny taught her. There are only two possible options. Either he was inexperienced, or he was deliberately distorting the knowledge. The girl understands that she was only truly taught the common language well, and wonders if their conscience has awakened. Bunny looks at the book and notices the similarities between the ancient scripts. She never expected Paktoa's knowledge to be so useful. The common language is a scientific script accessible to both aristocrats and commoners. Conservative aristocrats tried to preserve their privileges by mixing ancient literary scripts with official ones. The main character notices that the ancient symbols in the book resemble familiar Chinese characters. Book writing is indeed similar to Chinese, where parts are combined to form new words. They are not identical, but the principle itself is reminiscent of Hanchu, or Chinese. The girl understands that this will help her quickly learn to write, using just one basic book. It reminds her of when she was just starting to learn Hangul. Lady recalls the teacher's words about reading the book herself first and then explaining it to them. The protagonist realizes that she will once again be responsible for Bunny's education. After reading a little more, she says she hopes to be able to handle it all. Milady looks in the mirror and reflects on how she initially thought Bunny and Paktoa's lives were similar. an ancient script similar to Chinese, a reverse counting of days, 12 months according to the North Star, and the significance of a birth date. She sees her adult self reflected in the mirror and wonders if it's all just a coincidence. It's as if this world was created for the application of her abilities. Bunny doesn't understand if there is a reason why Kaguya was reincarnated here. Suddenly there's a knock at the door and the lady allows entry. A red-haired maid enters the room, and the protagonist recognizes her as the same innocent girl. The maid reports that she's gathered a group of girls who have volunteered to look after her. The girl believes she can handle herself quite well and doesn't need any attention. The red-haired maid asks her to open her mouth, saying that her hand will fall off if she doesn't eat. The main character objects and says she'll eat herself, but the maid insists, assuring her it will be too much for her. The maid says the doctor noted that she is undernourished, which is a bad sign, and that she needs to eat well. The main character remembers that a few days ago, the family doctor actually said the same thing. The girl looks at the maids, who act as if she might break at their touch or be blown away by the wind. She understands that they have come voluntarily and is surprised by this attitude, believing it to be due to Ophelia's image as a symbol of peace. Milady realizes she must eat if she wants to live. This reminds her of her grandmother, who told her not to belittle herself, otherwise life would become miserable. She remembers her grandmother calling her a spring tree. Spring is the time of blossoming, and her destiny is to become a whole forest of spring trees, if only she can wait until winter ends. The old woman said that the spring tree is a symbol of powerful life force because it takes root in the frozen ground and survives severe frosts. However, Kaguya did not live to see that spring. Even in a different body, her fate remained that of a spring tree. At this point, the protagonist decides to eat because she needs the strength to live. She must survive, welcome the new spring, and wait for the day when the flowers bloom, having survived this winter. The maid says she's a good girl and asks her to eat some more, offering her another bite and asking if her stomach hurts. The lady thinks she's still not used to being treated like this. A few minutes later, there is a knock on the door again, and the main character allows entry. The maid Angela comes into the room and announces that from today onwards, other maids have been assigned to the mistress. The red-haired maid says they heard nothing about it, but the head maid orders them to return to their seats immediately. The maid objects, saying the young mistress hasn't finished her meal yet. Angela asks if they intend to obey the order. The maid explains that they can't leave until their mistress finishes eating. The redhead confirms this, reminding them that even maids are not disturbed while they eat. Angela says that the new maids will take care of the young mistress's food and orders her not to be stubborn. Bunny asks the maid's name, and she introduces herself as Candace. The lady says it's a sweet name and she'll remember it. Hearing this, the red-haired girl wonders why the mistress didn't ask her name. Head maid Angela states that the maids have already been assigned and this decision cannot be changed, and she is sure that the mistress knows about it. Bunny asks whose decision it is and who gave her the right to command. The maid replies that it is logical that she is responsible for distributing the maids. The main character wonders if this means that everything here depends on her. The girl thinks Angela knows Bunny is just a cover. Despite the Grand Duke's permission to live in the palace, she treats her inappropriately, as expected of a head maid. The lady looks at Angela and notices her hooked nose, which since ancient times has been considered a sign of an outstanding personality. The girl understands that the most important thing is the eyes. Kind eyes speak of courage and wisdom, while evil ones indicate a mind that is used only for evil deeds. The main character looked at the head maid and decided she wasn't smart enough to understand what was going on. The woman clearly had a trusted patron, which meant there was someone pulling the strings behind her, even if she seemed to fit in perfectly with everyday life. Bunny knows that if she makes a mistake, Angela will immediately seize upon her right to remain in this house. The girl asks the head maid if there is any point in being looked after by people she knows nothing about. The woman replies that the lady will not be able to replace the maids who have already been assigned in any case. Bunny says she'll put it differently and orders the resumes of these maids brought to her. Or better yet, the resumes of all the castle's maids, including herself. The young lady reminds him that Angela herself said this was part of her duties. Hearing this, the woman hesitates and says she's not sure she has the right to show such things. The girl asks who dared to steal her job and suggests she go and scold the culprits herself. She clarifies whether the maid really finds this demand unreasonable. Angela doesn't understand what this brat is up to. She hopes she won't ask for a resume, and she doesn't see why she needs one at all. But the woman realizes that there is no way out and orders one of the maids to bring the documents. Bunny looks through the resume and notices that the moment of birth, date, and exact time are of great importance. The calendar is similar to the usual one, but when converted to the lunar cycle, luck is determined from birth and remains unchanged until adulthood. Among the 10 gods, she has developed Zhenyan, which means a high probability of good upbringing and a gentle character thanks to her mother and environment. However, after turning 25, her fortune becomes unfavorable due to Shinja Jin's strong energy. It's like a fire on a sandbar that's already been doused with water, but the elements collide, and even the earth crumbles. It's likely that the family that supported her underwent a major change, and the balance was destroyed. At that moment, the head maid looked at the young mistress and thought she was just a child. She couldn't understand why she was so nervous and abruptly declared that she had seen enough. Angela says that too much time has been wasted, and the girl should be dressed in a manner befitting the Cradell family. Bunny calls the woman over and whispers if she's pretending to be dead. The woman is surprised, and the girl realizes the information on her resume doesn't add up, as the maid has gone to great lengths to conceal her past. The protagonist knows what happened to this woman. Around the age of 25, a catastrophe occurred in her family. The balance collapsed and health problems began, most likely stomach problems. With the current state of medicine, she would have long ago fallen into eternal slumber. Bunny notes that the head maid looks perfectly healthy and says that she is brave. Angela replies that she doesn't understand what the lady is talking about. Bunny suggests that the maid knows what happened to Princess Ophelia's 3 handmaidens, then pretends that perhaps they were just unlucky and asks if that's why they were fired. The young lady explains that they dared to touch the owner's belongings, committed fraud under the family name, and spread rumors. She learned of this and reported it. The main character asks what punishment awaits someone who came to the duchy under the identity of a long-dead person and whether this woman will be able to take responsibility. Although Bunny is only a princess in name, she was adopted by the head of the family and brought to the main residence, allowing her to pretend to be Ophelia. The girl asks if she should tell the master of the house herself about the head maid's actions. Hearing this, Angela falls to her knees before her mistress and admits her mistake, apologizing for interrupting the meal. The young mistress claims that she dismissed her maids without permission and arbitrarily imposed her own people on her. Instead of treating the princess with respect, Angela indulged in insolence and negligence, committing a crime. The main character suggests that the woman go and tell the head of the family everything herself and asks if she can do it. Bunny adds that if she doesn't want to, there is a second option, to admit that her identity belongs to a person who has long been immersed in eternal sleep. The head maid, in despair, says that she will do it and hurries out, almost knocking down the maid. Angela thinks this girl is naive in believing everything will be resolved as she wishes. Even if the secret is revealed, she's confident she can explain everything and beg for mercy. The red-haired maid, entering the young mistress's room, is sincerely happy when she calls her by name. Bunny asks if she's seen the head maid and where she was headed. Reuben replies that she was heading in the opposite direction. Hearing this, the main character decides it makes no difference. Whether the maid confesses to the Duke or not, everything will proceed as expected. The girl still doesn't understand who exactly is hiding behind the head maid and controlling the whole situation. Angela comes to the Duchess, greets her, and thinks that she will first kneel down and then burst into tears, complaining that Bunny threatened her. The Duchess asks what's wrong, but at that moment the gentleman enters the room. The head maid is surprised by his presence and realizes that he is far less gentle than his mistress. Angela says she has something important to tell him. The young gentleman asks if he should leave, but she says no. The head maid apologizes for her carelessness. The young master replies that if that's the case, she should tell him everything. Angela says she'd better come another time, but he reminds her that she claimed it was urgent. The woman replies that it's a secret. The young gentleman is surprised at how she got information that even he doesn't know and demands an explanation. The Duchess reassures the maid and says that she can speak freely. The fair-haired boy remarks that if that's the case, it means Angela has secrets from her family. At that moment, the maid thinks he hates this girl and fired those maids for his sister's sake. The head maid understands that deep down he himself wants to get the fake princess away because they have already selected new maids for her. She hopes for understanding and explains that she has gathered people for secret surveillance in order to control the girl and her possible tricks. The woman says the fake's every move will be reported. Without this command, she won't be able to monitor her, so she suggests isolating the girl and keeping her subservient through food. She adds that if she does not obey, she will fall into eternal sleep from exhaustion. Hearing this, the young gentleman grabs the woman by the throat and asks if she is going to starve the child, who is already skin and bones. The Duchess orders Silver to stop, fearing the woman might fall into eternal sleep. Silver coldly replies that people don't leave so easily. The Countess says that she does not understand how such a terrible thought could arise and asks to first hear the reason. The young gentleman lets the woman go and says that he sees no other explanation other than madness and the desire to plunge into eternal sleep. Silver draws his sword and asks why she said such a thing in front of his mother and whether she wanted to scare a man with a weak soul. The maid replies that she acted on her mistress's orders. The young gentleman doesn't believe her and asks if she's gone crazy, because he doesn't understand how a mother could order a child to be locked up and starved. Angela insists that it was the Duchess's order, and the Duchess confirms her words. At this moment, the head maid does not understand why the mistress does not take her side, because she herself told her to do so. Angela explains that she thought this was what her mistress wanted, as the Duchess had changed with Bunny's return. The Duchess says she hopes the girl doesn't hate her for being a stepmother. The head maid claims that Bunny dared to disturb a noble lady and insult her without knowing anything, and that she is nothing but a fake who will be thrown out one day. Angela says she worked hard for her position and did everything solely for the sake of the mistress. The Duchess replies that she does not understand her and does not know where such rumors come from, and asks if the woman really thought she was acting for her. The head maid assures that the mistress clearly expressed her wishes. The lady asks if she's talking about Lily, as the child often makes things up. The maid replies that she was promised a promotion for her diligence. The Duchess says she appreciates her potential, but sees no connection with this cruel plan. Suddenly, the Duchess becomes ill, and the young gentleman shouts for someone to take this madwoman away. Silver orders the head maid locked in solitary confinement and denied water for a week. The woman begs for mercy. Angela screams that the Duchess herself called her special and chose her, and that she did everything for the sake of the lady. Silver says irritably that he doesn't understand why there are so many crazy people around his mother. The Duchess objects and says that the maid probably just didn't like Bunny, and that she herself is too kind to everyone. Silver declares that there is no point in pitying the servants and leaves. The Duchess is left alone and thinks that she now has more power, and does not understand how the maid got into such a mess. Meanwhile, Bunny is thinking that she got rid of the head maid and threw out the bait. The Duchess enters the young lady's room and says that she may have disturbed her without reason. Bunny is surprised by the Duke's wife's visit. She allows her to lie down and says she came just to see her face. The Duchess says she was in the church and prayed for her speedy recovery. The girl thinks she's in the presence of a true saint. Fluvia is a saint who saved the world during the Age of Chaos, helping Duke Credel suppress the plans of the mages and seal the demonic beast. But due to excessive use of her power, she lost her divine gift and was rejected by the temple. Duke Credel made her his second wife. This marriage earned her respect as the savior of the world, and soon the Duke's first wife gave birth to Princess Ophelia. The daughter of the Guardians, born in an era of peace, became its symbol, and the surviving mages set their sights on her. The Duke needed Fluvia to protect his daughter because despite her loss of power, she had vast experience fighting mages. But on the day Ophelia turned 7, the magicians managed to put a curse on her. Bunny realizes that it was Fluvia who passed the curse on to her, because only she knew how to do it. The girl asks what happened and points to the Duchess's trembling hands. She explains that Angela said something terrible and came to make sure Bunny was okay. The girl understands that fear is just part of the game. Bunny looks closely at the Duchess's face and reads patience, virtue, and a thirst for power in her features. A high, straight nose speaks of wealth and honor, the perfect shell for a saint. The girl does not understand whether this is an eternal saint, equally kind to everyone, as in Fluvia's memories. Bunny says the maid insulted and threatened her when she started making mistakes, like the other 3, and then ran away. She reminds him that she is recognized as the Duke's daughter and says that she wanted to tell him everything, but Angela ran away. The Duchess replies that she understands, and Bunny notes that the maid came to her right away. The girl asks what will happen to the maid now, and if she can see her. The saint replies that such thoughts are not for a child. The Duchess says the accusations are unfounded, and asks that they not do this again. Bunny agrees, thinking that otherwise she would look like a fool blackmailing adults. The girl looks at the Duchess and cannot understand what she really is. Bunny suggests that these are the kind of people who are most often behind the scenes, since Fluvia left Ophelia's maids and passed on the curse. She is not sure of her conclusions. Perhaps Fluvia simply believed in goodness and was drawn into it by accident. Bunny looks at Fluvia and feels uneasy, not understanding the reason for it. From the moment the saint arrives, her pupils remain motionless and frighteningly empty. Bunny read a book about the saint, but there was no date and time of birth, making it impossible to predict. She searched through the entire department, but found nothing, because the Credel family trees are everywhere. There's no place their gaze can't reach. It was in the north that the first empire of Abyss was founded. The United Kingdom was actually founded by the Grand Duke of Credel, and his power is equal to that of the Emperor. Bunny realizes that to escape the Credel family and the entire empire, she needs an equal force, the future Emperor or the Temple. Bunny's existence is Credel's weak point. If it were discovered, it would easily be exploited to control him. This would undermine the Duke's status and weaken the imperial authority. The young lady understands that rash actions will make her a convenient tool. Her position will then become even more dangerous, so she decides to find out who could become an ally. The main character recalls rumors that the emperor was a libertine and had many illegitimate children. The crown prince and the 5 princesses are unfit to rule, especially the prince. Bunny understands that their strength is unsustainable, and if this continues, the empire will collapse. If they fail, Duke Credel will step forward. The hero can turn everything around and become emperor himself, and then it will all be over. Suddenly, the main character hears a voice that says that he remembered something, because today is his birthday. Bunny notices the artifact on a chain and congratulates the guy. She decides to chat a little to clear her head. The young lady thinks that studying influential aristocratic families can open the way for her to enter the temple. The young man says there's not a single person on the entire continent who isn't outraged by the events of 9 years ago. He admits he wishes at least someone remembered his existence. Hearing him, the girl notices that the voice has become louder than before and asks what happened 9 years ago. The boy says that because of him, many have fallen into eternal sleep, because he was born to start a war. Bunny is shocked. 9 years ago, a rare revelation occurred in the main hall. A dark-haired, black-eyed child of evil was born, becoming the symbol of a new tragedy. The Great War was an era of chaos, when sorcerers and witches ran rampant, and war engulfed the entire kingdom. The war laid the foundation of the empire, but it also claimed countless lives. Thinking of the child of evil, Bunny wonders why she remembered it now. The boy recalls being teased for his dark hair, called a witch's spawn, and told he couldn't feel pain. His mother was considered insane, and he himself was considered a strange, mute child. Hearing this, Bunny asks if he's at the dump. He wonders how she figured it out, then thinks she shouldn't have said that. The girl asks him if he gets sick often, hearing his hoarse voice. She's about to tell him where to get medication, but he doesn't understand what she's talking about. Bunny explains that the road is difficult, and it's difficult to convey everything in words. If that doesn't work, she suggests leaving him a message. The guy says again that he's the cause of the war. The girl interrupts and says it's not his fault, because he was simply born. The boy mentions a prophecy. Bunny asks him about his birth time and offers to prove his words absurd. Bunny explains that a birth date is made up of 4 pillars: hour, day, month, and year. Destiny is neither good nor bad, and the future depends on a person's actions. Hearing this, the black-haired guy calls her strange and says that he was born around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The main character understands that he has only just turned 9 and realizes that the prognosis is rare and unusual. She sees the result and thinks it will lead to either the throne or poverty. Its pillars are divided into 4 elements: fire, water, metal, and wood promise untold treasures. Lack of land means instability and poverty, but his intelligence and ability make him a natural leader. If he becomes emperor, the earth will tremble under his power. But he will have to start from scratch, using a fragile foundation to change everything. Bunny understands that if he doesn't contribute to the country, he'll remain a pauper. It's either absolute power or nothing. She thinks that in a past life he could have become a military man or a prosecutor, but in this world everyone blindly believes prophecies. Bunny doesn't understand how exactly she can help him and how to explain everything correctly. Suddenly the guy says that he doesn't need consolation and doesn't understand why she's trying so hard for him. He claims it doesn't matter anymore. The girl asks why he thinks that and if it hurts him. The young man says that even if he's not to blame, nothing will change. The resentment won't go away because everyone insisted his birth brought chaos. The guy calls this his fate and admits that, thinking about the victims, he sees no point in living and does not want to wait for winter. Hearing this, Bunny thinks he might just freeze to death in the dump. She remembers looking at the moon and stars at night and noticing a little rabbit among them. Bunny remembers telling the boy to find that rabbit in the winter and understands what he was waiting for after listening to her. The girl asks him to wait until winter and not listen to other people's words, because it doesn't matter who allegedly started the war. She says that the one who is important is the one who created the prophecy and put the child in danger without thinking about his future. Bunny says that a 9-year-old boy is suffering because of a prophecy that is not destined to come true, and asks if this is fair. She recalls that the prophecy 9 years ago caused a tragedy similar to the Great War, but the true meaning of the child's birth was distorted. Bunny explains that the victims of the war should not blame the helpless child, but the emperor and the temple. She says that they were the ones sending innocent people to their deaths, and the guy was just one of the victims. The girl asks if it is okay to die for them, and suggests that he live until his last breath. The guy is surprised, and asks if she really wants him to live. Bunny replies that she wants him to live a long time. These words make him cry. The black-haired guy says his name is Demian. Having heard the name, the main character realizes that she hasn't learned anything useful beyond that. Bunny hadn't intended to get closer, but it just happened. She feels like there are too many unhappy children around, just like before. She thinks it would be worthwhile to teach him the constellations, but she made him wait until winter in vain and did not explain the way to the medicine. Bunny worries whether he will be able to survive the cold winter and endure his cruel fate. She thinks it might be a coincidence, but the combination of his date and time of birth symbolizes the flame of the sun. Fire is the essence of life. It dispels darkness, warms the world, and heralds a new beginning, like the spring sun. Bunny thinks they are compatible, but doubts that the one blamed for the tragedy can become emperor. She understands that even the current rulers came to power through numerous sacrifices. Bunny reflects that the emperor's path is one of blood and immersion in eternal sleep, unpredictability, and loneliness. She thinks that she could become a dense forest, a shelter for him. Even if a spark remains in it, it will flare up into a big fire in this forest. Bunny realizes that their destinies are similar and they can help each other. Leaving the Duke's office, she decides that she cannot rely on the imperial family and it is time to gather her strength. The young lady thinks that first of all she needs to choose a side in order to survive. Her thoughts are interrupted by Angelus, who asks why she is coming out of the office and if she is plotting something again. The lady replies that she was doing it alone. The guy asks what exactly. The girl says that she read the family tree because she knows almost nothing about the Kretel family. Hearing this, Angelus asks why they haven't hired a tutor for her yet. Bunny thinks he might be a chatterbox and a convenient target for intrigue. She replies that she was told to wait a month until she is fully recovered, because after exhaustion, she needs rest. Angelus is surprised that after 2 years in the palace, she's reduced herself to the state of poverty. The girl confirms. He looks at Bunny and rudely asks if she's retarded. She doesn't understand what he's talking about. The guy says that she gave all the food to the servants and asks if this is true. The girl answers in the affirmative, and he accuses her of stubbornness. Bunny explains that he can't eat fatty foods after being exhausted. He replies that this happens when you eat dirt and weeds. Angelus says she greedily ate poisonous herbs and now refuses normal food. Bunny replies that her body only accepts poisonous plants. She doesn't understand his gaze and senses anger in it. Angelus screams that she has lost her taste by eating garbage and that without slop she has no appetite. Bunny calmly says that she ate slop, dog food, and tree bark, so he is right. Angelus asks why she doesn't respect him. The girl smiles and asks if he's ever fasted for 15 days straight. At this moment, she realizes that he doesn't know her life at all. This is normal at a landfill, because when you're hungry, there's only one thought left in your head: to eat. Bunny asks if it's hard for him to imagine people living like that there. He calls it nonsense. The girl says that she herself would not have been able to live like this if she had not ended up with the Criddle family, and is glad that now is a time of peace. The terrible thing about war is that yesterday's interlocutor becomes an enemy. Compared to this, rag soup seems like an expensive dish, and she is grateful even for that. Bunny thinks that no matter how hard it is, compared to the dump, this place is paradise. Angelus says she's a princess now, and it's strange to talk about malnutrition. He chides her for handing out food. The girl asks if it really matters, since the real Bunny isn't here, and she doesn't understand why she needs to be interrogated. Angelus says that if she decides something, she should tell him first. She asks if he would listen to her. Bunny says he never cared about her food, clothes, or feelings because no one cared about her. She notices that he is concerned about her illness but considers this unnecessary. She understands that this is just a weak feeling of guilt, and that Duke Criddle taught him justice. Bunny says that she doesn't blame him and that she has nothing and never will. Angelus asks what she wants, reminding her that he is ready to give her everything. The girl replies that she only has the title of a false princess, and her greed is irrelevant here. She thinks that this time everything will be different, and she will accept sympathy only for the sake of regaining her strength. But Bunny doesn't know what will happen next if people start thinking of her as Ophelia. She looks at Angelus and understands that the hope for his mercy may be shattered again. Bunny says that she won't be able to stand so confidently forever and asks him to ignore her like before. She says that her health is not like that of a princess, but she will soon recover and leaves. Suddenly, Angelus calls out to her, grabs her hand, and says that he is not finished yet. He's surprised that if he hadn't grabbed her, she would have left. The girl is frightened, thinking he might have put her into an eternal sleep, and she understands that there's a limit to everything. Bunny asks him to be more careful in the future. He explains that he was scared by her sudden departure. The girl asks if he knows the dangers of careless intimacy. She says the wrong encounter can ruin a life, pushes him away, and leaves. Angelus asks if she has gone crazy, because he hears such strange words from the girl that he does not understand whether he can suffer because of this. The cleaning maids discuss how the Duke's son threatened the princess. The maid confirms this is true, as Grandpa Tom, the gardener, also witnessed the scene from the window. She says that due to illness, the princess was kept in seclusion for several years, and even now she lives almost alone. The cook agrees that the illness has passed, but the princess still eats separately, and almost no one comes to see her. This is all because the Grand Duke and his sons are too busy. The maid, Reuben, asks if this is connected to the Grand Duchess's death during the princess's birth. She heard the Duke was deeply in love with his first wife. Another maid asks for a quieter tone, as Lady Fluvia would disapprove. The maid wonders what's wrong with this, since the older one, who fawned on the mistress, is now absent. Ruby asks if this means the princess has revealed her true nature and the sins of Melissa, Sarah, and Emma. The other maid agrees. The dark-haired maid says the head maid deserves it, since she's been slapped by her herself. Another adds that she gave her a bucket with a hole in the bottom and sent her to fetch water. The maid thinks about the money Melissa stole from her, and her friend asks if she is complaining about losing 4 months' salary because of Sarah. The red-haired maid asks if she is a symbol of peace, since peace comes as soon as the princess appears in the courtyard. Her companion asks if she considers the princess a saint. A maid who worked in the palace for many years says that after the mistress lost her sacred power, another saint has not yet appeared. Candace's maid tells them to stop talking about the people they serve, and asks why such frivolity. Hearing this, the maid agrees that Candace is right and understands that if the butler hears, there could be big trouble. Candace thinks the maids talk too much. The princess is still a child and weak, and rumors would only burden her. Candace remembers that the young lady wanted to remember her name and thinks she's being ignored. She feels sorry for the lady. The protagonist realizes that she's learned something thanks to her work. Previously, she thought Bunny was to blame for the way she was treated by Ophelia's 3 maids, the eldest, Angela, and the Grand Duchess. The girl understands that there is an internal enemy who tried to isolate Bunny, and it will not be possible to sit quietly. The lady understands that intimidating the Creedle family isn't enough. In enemy territory, she needs a supporter. The main character understands that even if she stops being Ophelia, she needs a person who will follow her to the end. Bunny looks at Candace and thinks that the loner, strong and weak in front of the weak, knows how to keep faith and does not tolerate injustice. The girl speculates that the head maid didn't like Candace for her honesty, and now she might not dream of a promotion. The young lady asks Candace what she usually does. She replies that she works in the laundry. The lady thinks it's menial work, not in keeping with her experience. The main character thinks Candace is like a pearl in the mud. If she has the desire to get out, she'll be glad to enlist her support. The lady asks if she has any family, brothers or sisters. The maid replies that she has parents and 2 younger brothers. Bunny notices that Candace's eyebrows seem weak and thinks that the slightest conflict with her brothers could lead to discord or even eternal sleep. The main character tries to guess and asks whether her brother is sick or whether they were separated in childhood. The girl is surprised and assumes that all this is because of the family, but the maid replies that everyone is healthy and has not been separated from anyone. The young mistress asks the brothers birthdays and offers to tell them their birth times. The maid provides the dates and times. The lady asks if her younger brother is obedient. The maid is silent, and she realizes her brother is a mischievous one. She thanks him for the information. Bunny says the fortune-telling shows that an accident could happen to her younger brother, as the Gemini constellation is in the negative. The probability is high, since he's a child. The protagonist ponders how to say this naturally. Candace asks if she can ask an off-topic question. The maid explains that her mother had a fight with her brother over an abortion and cut off ties. Many workers don't maintain ties with their families, but instead create new ones. Candace adds that if family causes sadness, there will be friends later to have fun with. The main character laughs and asks what she's talking about. She thinks the maid is lonely, and rumors are still spreading. Bunny remembers Angelus losing control in the hallway, and aristocrats forget that servants have eyes too. The young lady thanks Candace for her concern and realizes that she is kind. The maid objects, thinking she's mistaken. The protagonist thinks Candace is weak among the weak. The maid thanks her for her understanding. Bunny offers to come closer and says that she is kind to her, so she will say something. The lady whispers that Joey can't swim and must be kept away from the river for 15 days, although he probably won't listen. He explains that he must be accompanied by an adult or a strong child who is a good swimmer and can pull the person who has fallen into the water. Candace is surprised, thinking that the lady is predicting misfortune. Bunny says it's just caution. The maid is surprised, and the girl understands that she gave advice, and whether to believe it or not is up to Candace. The main character orders Joey not to be allowed near water for 15 days. The maid thinks she's seen the future. Candace doubts this, because these are legends about oracles. She wonders if the princess could have deceived her. The maid assumes that the princess might be speaking due to illness, but understands that it is enough to give coins so that they will look after the boy. After a while, Candace comes to the princess's lap and tells her that she saved her younger brother's life. The maid understands that if she had not listened to the advice, trouble could have happened, and she does not understand how the princess knew about the situation. The maid asks how to repay. The young mistress orders her not to kneel, as if she had committed a crime. Candace says she has nothing to give, so Bunny offers to become her personal maid. The maid thinks it's enough to be loyal and follow orders. The lady reminds her that she was the only one who supported her when the head maid behaved rudely. Candace says she just did her job. Bunny is glad she takes it in stride. The main character thinks Candace is a good person. Despite the head maid's punishments, she remains the same. Bunny realizes that Candace has character. She doesn't ask for anything in return and behaves naturally. The young lady asks if her brother is okay, because the weather was cold and he fell into the water. The maid replies that her brother has a cold, but will soon recover. He is healthy. Bunny says she'll still send for a doctor. Candace doesn't think it's worth it for her. The princess objects. She is now a devoted maid, and she can ask the butler for help. Candace looks at the princess and thinks that she will follow her all her life. As they exit, the red-haired maid falls to the floor. Bunny asks if she was eavesdropping and if she's hurt. The redhead says that this is the first time she has been treated so kindly. Candace exclaims, not understanding how this is possible. The redhead gets up and runs away. Bunny suggests they ignore it. Candace thinks Reuben might be a spy, but Bunny suggests calming down. The maid assures that curiosity does not justify inappropriate conversations, since there is already a lot of gossip about the princess. Candace explains that it's not a matter of taste, but that they are opposites but complement each other perfectly. The main character thinks that Candace has great potential, and Reuben is energetic about finding hidden gems. Bunny suggests that the maid take a closer look at Ruby, as she is sweet and sparkling, and explains that she treats everyone generously. The young lady says that Ruby is not frivolous, but like a candle that illuminates everyone around her. The main character explains that Ruby is ready for the sake of her loved ones, and Candace is made of solid iron, but Ruby's flame can melt her heart. Opening the door to the classroom, Bunny suggests that they be nice to Ruby because she is sensitive. When the maid is left alone, She thinks that the young mistress is a fairy. Candace returns to work, and the others ask if it's true that the princess saved her brother and sent a doctor. The maid thinks the princess thought Ruby was cute, but she doesn't understand what she's talking about. Candace thinks Ruby is a fool who will blab even when there is danger, and she doesn't understand why. Walking down the corridor, the maid sees Duchess Marcel and Baroness Garnet. Candace doesn't understand why the Duchess has come, as she's almost completely stopped visiting the palace since Fluvia's arrival. The lady-in-waiting criticizes her for her inability to do ordinary things. The woman in green asks if she is the princess's maid, and asks to be told that the Duchess of Marcel is waiting for her in the drawing room. Candace asks if she can say something. The maid explains that the princess has not yet recovered, and it is her duty to protect the lady's mind and body. The maid of honor laughs and asks why she cares so much, since the princess decides who she dates. Garnet asks what her mentor taught her. Suddenly, the Duchess stops the maid of honor, explaining that she was rude, and asks the maid to raise her head. The Baroness smiles and says the princess has a faithful maid who saved her younger brother. She wonders if her son has a chance. Silver appears in the hallway and asks why her godmother came unannounced. The Baroness explains that she heard about her goddaughter's recovery. Marcel says she was in a hurry after hearing the good news and apologizes for her insolence. Silver thanks her for her kind words, but says that Ophelia is not yet in a position to receive guests. The young gentleman asks if he should conduct her to the honor. The Baroness offers to escort him to the Duchess so as not to waste their time. Marcel explains that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and that they could have a cup of tea. Candace thinks that the gentleman is unhappy with the visit, but she still needs to find the princess and inform her about the Duchess. When the maid opens the door, she sees Ruby in the mistress's room. The young mistress says she's already heard about the Baroness's visit from Ruby. Candace thinks the maid has arrived faster than the wind. Bunny notes that it has been a long time since she last saw Madame Marcel and suggests that the maid be gentler with her. The protagonist encourages Ruby to continue talking. She reveals that Madame Marcel is her and her mistress's godmother. The maid explains that when Bunny was born, the Grand Duke was fighting a demonic beast and entrusted Marcel with the care of the children. Ruby adds that the Marcel family had been loyal to the Duke since the founding of the empire and were close to his late wife. Meanwhile, Baroness Marcel and the Duchess are drinking tea. The Duchess thanks them for their time. Fluvia tells the girl not to worry, because serving the guests is her responsibility, and she is not prepared. Baroness Marcel replies that it's not necessary, but thanks for your understanding. She's picky about her tea. The Baroness insists that hospitality is the most important thing, and asks if she is pushing herself too hard. Marcel heard that the lady had fallen ill because a mongrel had entered the mansion. The maid of honor thinks about the servant and hints that Madame Fluvia is from the orphanage and seems to hate Madame Saint. In the room, Candace exclaims to Ruby that she'll get angry if she keeps talking. Ruby justifies it by saying she's just curious. The young mistress invites the red-haired maid to continue her story. She explains that Madame Marcel was categorically against the Duke and Madame Fluvia's marriage, but after Fluvia moved into the mansion, their communication almost ceased. The maid adds that Marcel valued her friendship with Eleanor very much and was upset by the Duke's decision. Lady Fluvia admits that she understands her position as inferior to the Grand Duke's late wife, and unsurprisingly, this displeases her. The Baroness asks how she dares question His Highness's choice. Marcel explains that she couldn't interfere in family affairs for a long time. It was difficult for Fluvia to immediately assume the role of mistress of the vast Cradell family, especially without knowing her. The Baroness announces that she will select several maids and send them to them. They are reliable and experienced, and will be able to make up for the shortage. Fluvia thanks her for her concern, but the Baroness replies that thanks are not needed, as she has preparations to make for the meeting in Lilia. Cradell's wife is surprised that Marcel is interested in such a small gathering. The Baroness explains that the meeting was arranged by the Grand Duchess. Reuben explains that Madame Marcel used to be influential in society and sometimes blocked Fluvia's actions. The main character thinks that they are feuding, but the maid adds that Marcel always sent gifts to her godchildren on their birthdays. Candace remembers that Marcel came here because of her son. The red-haired maid says that the Baroness has a sick son, and perhaps she came because Bunny saved her brother, hoping for the young mistress's help. Bunny thinks about the fate of Marcel's son, which she saw in the family tree. The main character reflects that if the riverbed is high, the soil will become muddy and wash away. The soil symbolizes the skin, so one must be careful about skin diseases. Fire energy is weakened by water, the heart weakens, and the eyes may go blind. Bunny wonders if her son is so ill that the Duchess came on rumors. The main character understands that she can't help her son in any way. Madame Marcel asks the Grand Duchess about the progress of the young lady's training, and suggests that if there is no etiquette teacher, she can recommend a friend or teach one herself. Fluvia replies that Viscount Leiden is already teaching her. The maid of honor whispers to Marcel who the Viscount is, and she admits that this is unexpected, because he is impeccable in his knowledge of etiquette. The Baroness asks whether the princess's education was entrusted to the man who bought the title, and expresses doubt. The maid of honor thinks it's because Bunny is a fake princess and doesn't know what Fluvia will do. The Grand Duchess says there is nothing to understand here, but the Baroness still does not agree. Fluvia explains that Viscount Leiden is educated and ideally suited to teach Ophelia now. The Grand Duchess assures there's no need to worry. The issues troubling Marcel are insignificant. As Baroness Marcel leaves the mansion, she is accompanied by young Mr. Silver, who asks if his godmother is okay. Marcel explains that she feels dizzy after talking to her, but thinks she said something that might have upset her. The Baroness suggests that it is because she is a person who does not give anything, and she lacks it. Silver suggests to his godmother that she shouldn't be so angry with his mother. The Baroness asks if he is talking about the Grand Duchess, and asserts that she is the Duchess, not his mother. The guest clarifies that he means her mother Eleanor, a close friend. Suddenly, the Baroness hears the young mistress's maid calling her. She delivers a letter from the princess. Bunny thinks that her enemy's enemy is her friend, and that she cannot ease the suffering of a sick person. Marcel, sitting in the carriage, recalls seeing Ophelia once as a child and barely remembers her face. Then she reads a letter in which the young lady greets her. The woman notes that Bunny's letters are rare and may contain errors, and asks for patience and understanding. The letter says that she came after hearing rumors, but she can't cure the patient. After reading, the Baroness understands everything and is surprised at what she expected. The young lady writes that her son is physically weak, but this is not a reason to lose hope. Betty informs him that although her son is weak, he will live longer than his mistress, and that this doesn't mean she will die soon. All partings are sad, but there is nothing worse than experiencing a child's descent into eternal sleep. Bunny asks the Baroness not to worry too much, and to think about how loss gives a chance for something new, because it is an act of kindness. He writes that his son is prone to illness, and his body is weaker than others, but weakness doesn't equal kindness. Personal qualities, like illnesses, are intensified. A person is a heart that loves without limits. Betty understands that her son Marcel has grown up smart, honest, and considerate, and therefore popular with others. The girl writes that good deeds from the heart bring good luck, and asks if the madam thought about why her son was born weak. Bunny adds that if he doesn't know how to wield a sword, the strongest knight can teach him. Everyone is born with a different light, and weakness doesn't make it dim. The young lady writes that his radiance is simply different from others. Baroness Marcel smiles after reading the letter and is surprised by Ophelia's kind words. The maid of honor asks why she's crying. Marcel replies that Ophelia has grown up but is patiently awaiting her meeting with Knox. The main character hears the call of the young master and is surprised, because the recovery period prescribed by Angelus has ended, and she has lost track of time. The girl looks out the window and thinks that winter has come abruptly and harshly. She remembers that she didn't receive messages and worries about him, then touches the artifact on her neck. The young lady understands that the conversation with Demian could be long, and now is not the right time. Walking down the corridor, the girl thinks that keeping such a valuable artifact in the landfill is dangerous, and that she will have to hide it carefully. Betty knows that since he gave his name, he will definitely call if anything happens, and she needs to stay in touch. Entering Angelus's office, she notices it's the first time she's seen this room since the conference room. The young gentleman is a workaholic, even though he's only 14, and she wonders why he's in such a rush to grow up. Betty remembers that he has been confirmed as the successor. Entering the office, Angelus reminds her to be attentive and gives her time to adjust. The young gentleman looks at the girl and says that she couldn't sit still. The lady hopes that he will rest, but the guy says that he never gave the right to disturb the order in the palace, and suggests that she not act rashly. The protagonist thinks this chaos is now called order. Angelus asks what letter she sent to Madame Marcel. Bunny replies that it was nothing special, she just wrote words of encouragement because Madame was worried. The young gentleman cries out that she did not come for this, and asks how everyone believed that she was the next saint. The main character thinks that she did nothing special, but rumors spread within a couple of days, and this shows how rotten people destroy order. Bunny believes that letting the rumors spread is good for her reputation, but she doesn't understand why it happened. Angelus says he'll keep an eye on her, and if Ophelia's reputation is damaged, she'll return to the tower. She understands this is frightening, and agrees. The young master points out that if Mom hears the rumors, her heart will break, as divine power is passed on after death, and asks if she has thought about the consequences. The main character thinks that he is not upset, but simply wants to isolate the innocent Bunny because of the Grand Duchess. Bunny realizes that Bunny is the villain, and Fluvia is the victim, and in the eyes of the Credle family, she is a brave hero. The young mistress apologizes and asks the servants to stop chatting. She thinks that even if she told them about the Duchess's suspicious behavior, they wouldn't believe her. There's no evidence. Angelus says it's not her fault. The girl realizes they were keeping Bunny and didn't even know it, but the young master warns that if rumors spread beyond the palace, people might interfere, and his sister would be in danger. The protagonist understands that they are the greatest threat, and revealing Bunny's identity will be a problem. The girl thinks that this is connected with the saint's reputation, but she is glad that the rumors have spread, because it provokes the Duchess, The protagonist understands that if this sparks a conflict between the temple and the Cradell family, it will be the climax. The name of the symbol of peace's youngest daughter will be cursed, as they brought the child to assume the role of a saint. She doesn't know if the temple will forgive the Grand Duchess for this. Bunny thinks it would be great if the temple took care of the Cradell family. At that moment, the young master grabs her by the shoulders and asks her to concentrate, saying that it is important, because she could be condemned even for accepting the curse. Angelus asks if she wants to be in the noose. She looks at his serious face and replies, "Of course not." The young master hopes the girl understands and says that classes will begin soon. Since she now lives in the main palace, she needs to master all the young lady's skills flawlessly. Bunny is surprised he warned her in advance. Before, he would have simply scolded her. She wonders why his attention is focused specifically on her, and she realizes it's not all bad, even if it's unpleasant. The protagonist believes Angelus admitted that the Archduke's wife's behavior was caused by the loss of her divine power. She doesn't understand how to act without manipulation. The young lady sees a man and doesn't understand who he is. The contents of the book differ greatly from what her mentor taught her. Either he is inexperienced or he is deliberately distorting his knowledge. The girl remembers that the teacher will first study the book himself and then read it to her. The teacher reveals that he is Viscount Leiden and did not expect her return. The main character recalls that 2 years ago he was responsible for Bunny's education. Typically, an aristocrat's child is raised by a noblewoman, but who would agree to teach a pauper like her? The Viscount was then responsible for Bunny when the Grand Duke needed help. Viscount Leiden was a peasant, but during the period when the mages were raging, he sold supplies to the needy and then bought the title. He's an example of a self-made man, and thanks to that, he became a teacher. He has impeccable etiquette, and he thought teaching Bunny would help him rise to the top, but he was wrong. During class, Bunny asks if she can do anything specific. The teacher explains that to win her favor, she needs to show what she's good at, and first, change her tone of voice and behavior. The Viscount asks her to consider who her relatives like most. The girl replies that it's Ophelia. The main character recalls that at first the teacher only gave the basics, understandable to everyone, without going into depth. A frustrated Bunny says it's pointless because they hate her. The teacher explains that it's because they're different, and that's why she feels rejected. The girl asks what it takes to look like Ophelia. He replies that first you need to change your outfit. Bunny complains that she has no money and doesn't know what Ophelia preferred. The Viscount suspects there might be clothes left in the room and asks if she can check. The girl replies that her room is in the main building, and she didn't want to steal. The teacher says he saw a strange book in the main library about changing one's destiny. The girl asks where it is. He explains that it's in the corner at the end of the row, and that there are many interesting books there. The main character understands that no one will listen to Bunny's difficulties because the Viscount only pushed her to action. She thinks that even if she reveals his plans, he will find a loophole and leave. Bunny understands that in the eyes of others, he is a patient teacher who cares for difficult children. She is pleased to see him. The teacher says he was worried about her, heard about her difficulties, and is glad to see her in good health. He notes that the young lady is still as sweet as ever. The lady thinks she still looks stupid, but she must have heard that the headmaid has been replaced, although Bunny is still being ignored. The main character remembers that the teacher has already achieved something, because with his help, Bunny provoked an accident. The girl understands that in the long run it was more profitable for him to teach her, because Bunny's trust will remain forever. Bunny realizes that the Viscount is a wise man who rose through the war, became an aristocrat, and chose not to use her, but to set her up, because she has real power. The young lady asks if he will teach her again. The teacher asks if she thinks she doesn't deserve it. The girl assures him that this is not so, and says that she really wants to continue her studies. Milady explains that she checked his birth date immediately after returning to the main mansion. He is genuinely surprised, and she explains that she wanted to give him a gift as a token of her gratitude. At that moment, the girl remembers her knowledge of his imminent involvement in the Duchess's manipulations. The young lady smiles softly and invites him to look forward to that day. The teacher suggests finishing the reading and moving on to etiquette lessons. He notes that the lady is still weak in writing, so he will interpret the text himself. Then he asks what she would do if she met someone at a reception who knew her but hadn't yet been introduced. The lady replies that she's not sure, but will wait for him to greet her first. The teacher says that's true and explains that it's not right to greet someone of higher status first. The Viscount adds that most of those present will be of lower rank than Milady. Therefore, they must wait for someone of higher rank to speak first. Hearing this, the girl thinks that if she acts this way, she will be criticized for being cold and condemned for being excessively modest. The teacher tells her that she should be a leader, not a follower, and that modest attire is an important sign of high society. At the same time, the girl reflects that she doesn't understand this explanation, since in the book, such clothing is described as common courtesy. The main character looks at the teacher and thinks nothing has changed. Even Bunny, who grew up in a dump, wouldn't understand this absurdity. The young lady gets bored in class and thinks the teacher should listen to himself from the outside. The Viscount turns to the girl and announces that that's all for today. Hearing this, the lady is genuinely pleased. The teacher says they will see each other tomorrow and reminds them not to forget to review the material before going to bed. The main character looks at the teacher and notes his angry, snake-like eyes, small and heavily whitened, his narrow jaw, sharply protruding bones, and face covered in small scars and acne. The girl thinks she's never met such an unlucky man, even in her past life. Luck is clearly passing him by. A teacher is a person with correct thoughts and positive beliefs. They understand their own shortcomings and strive to compensate for them, act consciously, and do not demand anything from others. However, the heroine understands that he should stay away from those who try to take advantage of him, and everything fits together. He skillfully coped with his misfortune. A week later, the main character thinks she has finally passed another idiotic lesson. Then the girl asks the maid if she brought flowers, takes them, and runs into the hall to her mother, where Lilia's meeting is taking place, saying that she picked flowers especially for her. At this moment, she thinks that she should show the results of today's lesson. The surprised Duchess thanks the girl and then turns to the other ladies and greets them. The main character introduces herself as Ophelia Cradell, and immediately remembers that she is not allowed to be the first to greet those who are higher in status than her. She understands that although Ophelia is the Duke's heir, she is now only their daughter, and her position is lower than that of these ladies. Therefore, she must behave modestly and respectfully. The heroine thinks that she is simply following the Viscount's lessons, and tells the lady that she is meeting such noble ladies for the first time, and is very happy about it. A stranger approaches and says she's heard a lot about her and is glad to see her in person. The young lady looks at her and thinks she looks offended. Bunny understands that such events are held for the sake of regular donations to the almshouse, and it looks as if the hearts of those present are full of compassion. The woman in the yellow dress asks if the girl is okay, and says that although it's late, with diligence she'll soon catch up with the other children. Bunny thinks no one even realizes that this is already the result of her training. The lady in the lilac dress says that the girl has the blood of cradle in her, and that she will grow up noble, elegant, and more worthy than anyone else. Another lady adds that at her age, she's already a true noblewoman. The main character thanks her and grabs her hands. But the lady notices that the girl's hands are too stiff and wonders why she is wearing such an old dress. Seeing the ladies' surprise, the Grand Duchess explains that because of the illness, the doctor ordered them to frequently wash their hands and body with strong remedies to treat the infection. Fluvia says that if only her mother were a saint, and adds regretfully that her hands have become so hard because of her own impotence. The heroine looks at her and thinks she admires her acting skills. The Duchess approaches and says the girl's body hasn't yet recovered, and asks why she came running. The young lady replies that the room was too boring. Fluvia says the road to recovery will be long, as she was very ill and still too thin. The Grand Duchess throws her cape over the girl and says that the northern winters are harsh and she cannot go outside, even if she likes her pajamas. Hearing this, the lady in the yellow dress understands everything and says there's no need to worry. Fluvia strokes the girl's face and promises to go to church every day and pray for her speedy recovery. The Grand Duchess tells the girl to return, as they are in the greenhouse, where the cold air could worsen her condition. Suddenly, the young lady screams, hugs the woman, and tells her not to cry. She secretly thinks that if she were going to leave, she wouldn't have come at all. Bunny says that if Mama is sad, then Ophelia is too, and asks her not to be sad anymore. The girl says the doctor reported her almost complete recovery from malnutrition. The ladies are surprised, and one of them notices a hole in her skirt. The lady points out that the Duchess's daughter's petticoat is made of old and clearly poor quality fabric. The lady in the yellow dress thinks the Duchess and her sons are always impeccably dressed, and perhaps the girl is given old clothes because of her poor health. The lady in the green dress thinks illness is no excuse for lack of manners. At this time, Fluvia looks at the girl and thinks that she is an uneducated trash. Then the Grand Duchess turns to the ladies and says that she could not tell the truth earlier, but while she was away from her family, her child was ill, and its care was entrusted to the maids. Hearing this, the main character cannot believe that she has revealed the family's dirty secrets, although she, of course, remains silent about the violence. Fluvia says that the girl continues to wear this petticoat because of the memories, and the feeling of guilt still does not leave her, because she did not expect this from the maid she trusted. Hearing this, the girl thinks that if everything were true, there would be no need to explain it like this. The Duchess tries to evoke pity and asks if there's a mother worse than her. The ladies reassure her, saying it's not her fault since it was the servants' doing. Fluvia agrees, saying that bad intentions are truly frightening. The lady in the yellow dress adds that, having lived most of her life in the temple, the Duchess might know little about worldly life. The Duchess says she's afraid Ophelia won't forgive her, and even dreads the thought that she might not love her, since she's not her biological mother. The ladies console her and ask her to be strong for the child's sake. Viscount Leiden angrily asks the girl why she did it, but she doesn't understand what he's talking about. The teacher explains that he's referring to the morning incident in the greenhouse. The heroine thinks he found out about it even before Angelus, and that the Duchess has already scolded him. The young lady says she simply wanted to give flowers to her mother's friends and tried to follow his lessons. The teacher asks when he ever told her such a thing. The lady replies that she dressed modestly, greeted her elders first, and does not understand what the mistake was. The Viscount exclaims that modesty is not like wearing clothes with holes. The girl replies that she wears them every day because they are the purest things. The teacher asks if she has other clothes. The lady replies that the real Ophelia's clothes are too luxurious and not at all modest. She adds that she will get into trouble if she gets them dirty. Hearing this, the teacher becomes disappointed, then takes out a jar, takes out one tablet and offers it to her, saying that it is for improving memory and that he found them on purpose. The Viscount claims that the medicine improves memory, and he obtained it especially for the princess. The lady asks if this is true, takes the pill, and says that she will now become a genius. The teacher smiles and says that now he will see what she is capable of, suggesting that she continue studying the symbol. The Viscount claims that he never spoke about modest clothing, and that people of lower status should greet first. He claims that he was always a faithful mentor and said only the right things, but because of her absent-mindedness, she did not listen to the lessons. The young lady asks if this is true. He answers affirmatively, and the girl agrees, blaming everything on her own stupidity and carelessness. The teacher says that he should have said this a long time ago and does not understand why he endured it for so long. The Viscount declares that everything will be right now. He says she was too stupid to understand his lessons and tells her to listen carefully. If Prince Angelus comes, she must say she doesn't remember anything. At this point, the lady thinks it's like a drug clouding her mind. She tries to act right, but he shows his true colors. The heroine understands that even under the threat of being plunged into eternal sleep, he would not leave any evidence. The servant asks if everything is all right. Angelus replies that it is, and thinks he's had another nightmare, the one that's been tormenting him since what happened to Ophelia. The young gentleman asks if there's any medicine left for his headache. The butler suggests he rest and says there's no point in overexerting himself, as the Grand Duke hasn't yet retired. The Viscount suddenly enters, apologizes for disturbing them, and says the matter is urgent. He mentions the White Lily meeting and the princess's unexpected appearance, which prompts everyone to wonder what she had to say. The teacher says that they witnessed her inappropriate words and actions. The young gentleman asks if it's possible this is a false accusation. The Viscount replies that there are too many witnesses. Hearing this, Angelus cries out and asks why he was only informed now, since the meeting was a week ago. The man explains that the Grand Duke's wife forbade the information to be spread so as not to tarnish Credel's reputation and harm the princess. The young gentleman thinks he shouldn't have trusted her and blames himself. He believes this girl can only be controlled through surveillance, inspections, and pressure. After these words, Angelus drinks the medicine and says that if even a spot appears on Ophelia's reputation, he will send her to the tower. A young gentleman enters the girl's room and says he knows how smart she is and asks what she was thinking. He silently notes that she is not Ophelia, but she is frighteningly similar. Angelus says he doesn't want to listen to excuses and orders her to go to the tower immediately. He says he'll completely replace the maids and do everything he can to ensure she never thinks about such a thing again. Hearing this, the heroine says that she is to blame for everything, calls herself stupid and absent-minded, admits that she did not listen well to the lessons, although the teacher explained everything perfectly. Suddenly, the girl screams and says that she will become obedient and submissively take the medicine that Viscount Leiden gave her. The young gentleman doesn't understand what they're talking about, but suddenly, the girl drops the box, spilling pills. Angelus asks what it is. The young lady says that if she does not accept them, she immediately faints. At this point, Bunny thinks he's been caught, and Fluvia's methods are truly effective. She too can feign weakness, as the Credels are accustomed to treating such creatures with leniency. The heroine thinks it's good that Angelus is not immune to pity, and that he is a hypocrite. The young gentleman picks up the girl in his arms and orders them to call a doctor, shouting that the princess has fallen. The doctor orders her to be laid on the floor and examined. At that moment, the girl thinks he might figure it out. Then the heroine opens her eyes, looks at the young gentleman, and wonders why he's so pale. Angelus says she's awake. The lady asks if he was asleep. The young gentleman, surprised, asks again how she can say such a thing. The heroine thinks he's taking it too seriously and is very worried. She asks where he is and what this place is. Angelus explains that this is the medical room and says that she fell after his words, asking if she remembers it. Hearing this, the lady thinks that this isn't why she fainted, as she'd been bracing herself for a whole week. She understands why he felt relieved when she woke up. The doctor says she came too quickly, which is a good sign. He turns to the gentleman and says that he should have been called immediately, because he was surprised when the princess was brought here. The girl thinks she's been quiet lately, and it's paying off. She looks at the guy and realizes he's more interested in making amends than in what the maid did to her. The heroine thinks that his disgust towards Bunny has become less, and this pleases her. The lady understands that now he will hear everything she says. The doctor says she has almost recovered from exhaustion, but he is surprised by her sudden fainting spell and asks if she had been feeling unwell. The young lady confesses that she often felt dizzy and that something was wrong with her body. Angelus asks what exactly. The girl says that when she wakes up in an unfamiliar place, she feels as if it is not her, and her memories are confused, which is why she behaves strangely. The lady says she has one guess and asks if he will scold her if she tells him. The young gentleman takes her hand and assures her that he will not, offering to speak. The young lady says that when she does not take the pills that Viscount Leiden gives her, she feels better. The girl says he assured her the medication would improve her memory, and she took the pills every day. At the same time, she realizes she didn't actually do it of her own free will. The main character realizes that if everything goes well, those around her will assume that 2 years of strange behavior were the result of pills, forgetfulness, and constant mistakes. The young lady says she was told the medicine would help, so she continued taking it. The lady adds that the pills didn't do much good, but once she secretly stopped taking them, her head became clearer. The girl asks if the Duke could talk to the Viscount so that she no longer has to take these medications. Hearing this, the young gentleman is surprised and says there are no medicines for improving memory. He assumes this is a remedy created using golden magic. The doctor explains that it's a hypnotic drug that brainwashes and deprives a person of the ability to think rationally. The constant repetition of the same words makes them believe anything, even if it contradicts their own beliefs. The doctor says that the girl obeyed even the most ridiculous demands, and when she comes to her senses, she will experience a strong sense of guilt. The doctor explains that the drug is not usually addictive, but with long-term use, other people's thoughts become mixed with one's own, damaging one's mental state. The doctor adds that such medications can cause a person to go crazy, and in severe cases, they can end up falling into an eternal sleep. The protagonist realizes the situation has gotten out of control. The Kreddle's anger over the golden magic leads to an investigation that involves everyone, from simple workers to servants. The girl realizes that if the source of the book of golden magic that changes destinies is revealed, then Viscount Leiden will no longer be able to get out of this mess unscathed. The main character thinks that the Viscount might have suspected something, or quickly learned the news, and disappeared without a trace. However, she understands that even in this way, it is almost impossible to hide from the Kreddles, and she did not expect such side effects. The lady looks at the young gentleman and says that if he continues to behave like this, he will fly back out into the corridor. He doesn't understand what she's talking about, and the girl tells him to stop shaking his leg, calling it inappropriate. The young gentleman replies that she speaks like an old woman and wonders how anyone could have hit him like that. He looks at the lady and decides that she needs to grow up first to do that. The young woman asks him not to interfere in her affairs. The young man replies that he is doing this unwillingly and warns that if there are people in the area using such drugs on children, she could become a victim again. Bunny says she has security, but the young master insists he is much stronger than them. The servant informs the princess that the first Duke has arrived to see her. Silver offers to walk her home, but she declines, saying that if he continues to sit with his legs crossed, it will end badly. The guy jokingly asks if he'll fly away again, and she replies that he'll get a pelvic tilt. Walking down the corridor, the young lady asks the butler where they are taking her. He explains that the first Duke and the visiting physician are waiting for her in another medical office. Suddenly, the heroine drops the artifact and bends down to pick it up. At that moment, the servant covers her mouth with his hand and grabs her. The girl is very scared, not understanding where she is being taken. In an unfamiliar room, she sees the Viscount, who says that it seems that everything went well. The teacher holds a strange mixture in his hand and says that if he gives it to the girl, everything will end. The main character looks at a bottle with a green liquid, and the man asks if she is interested in what it is. The Viscount says it is poison, and only he knows where the antidote is. The teacher speculates about what will happen next, saying that if he reveals the truth, the Kreddles will persecute him. He also wonders what will happen to the true bearer of the curse if the current one dies. The young lady calls him a psycho. Hearing this, the man loses his temper, shouting that she's annoying him and asking why she thinks he's doing all this. The lady replies that the reason lies within himself. She says Viscount Leiden seemed like a man with potential, striving to overcome his status and seemingly knowing the future, seizing his opportunity and time. But all this was quickly destroyed by perverted morals, cruelty, cunning, impatience, and a hot temper, because of which all efforts were wasted. The girl understands that rising, thanks to her abilities, is luck, but falling into the abyss can happen at any moment. The protagonist realizes she knew how it would end, which is why she obeyed him for so long. The outcome was predictable. Bunny says that he just doesn't know how to be a human and acts like an animal. Hearing this, the Viscount breaks down and screams that he will plunge her into eternal sleep right now. Suddenly, the girl feels a hand on her shoulder, and the young gentleman says that he was in no hurry. Silver closes the girl's eyes and tells her that she shouldn't see this. The Viscount asks in surprise how they got here. At that moment, the heroine realizes he thinks she trusted them without reason. The lady recalls the artifact given to her by Angelus and his words about a summoning spell that would allow her to track down the second stone if she broke the first. Angelus points his sword at the Viscount and orders him to reveal who is behind him, asking how he knew about everything. The young gentleman wonders why he didn't ask about the source of the golden spirit before, and why he thought she found it in the dump. He understands that in front of him is just a child who wanted to be loved. Angelus grabs the teacher by the neck and demands to tell the truth. The young gentleman hands him the poison, forcing him to drink it. The Viscount tries to get the antidote, but Angelus knocks it out of his hands. Angelus says this is the last chance to speak. The young gentleman again asks who is behind him, realizing that the Viscount did not act alone. because there was clearly someone influential behind him. Angelus looks at the bodyguards and realizes they were unaware of this and were merely pawns. He decides to figure out how this happened. Suddenly, the Viscount declares that he acted alone. Hearing this, Angelus recalls the incident with the maid who confessed and was expelled. Such an outcome is impossible now. The young master realizes that things are much more serious. Bunny's poisoning and the attempt to take her hostage mean the Viscount had support, and he intends to discover the truth at any cost. At this moment, the Viscount thinks only about how to survive, but still insists that he did everything himself. Angelus says that he dug his own grave and plunges him into eternal sleep. After this, the young gentleman adds that there will be no second chance. Silver closes the girl's eyes and asks if she's okay. The lady replies that she is. At this point, the heroine thinks that if she wants to survive in this world, she will have to get used to such things, and she is glad that she still has memories of Bunny. The young lady looks at the body and thinks that she has seen something like this in the slums many times. Lady asks if everyone is put into eternal sleep. How will they know who's behind it? Silver wonders why she assumed it was done to everyone. The young gentleman explains that they left 2 people behind. Seeing the guard, the girl asks what's wrong with them. At this point, Angelus realizes that they had pills in their mouths and says that he made the same mistake. Angelus thinks he should have left the Viscount alive. He realizes his anger has blinded him, and his blood is literally boiling. The young gentleman understands that he reacted so sharply because of the girl he was supposed to protect. Angelus says he can't undo what happened, but promises to do everything he can to find out who's behind it. The main character looks at him, thinks he's an idiot, then smiles and thanks him. The young lady thinks that her eldest son, raised by the heroic ideology of the Krettles, does not even suspect Fluvia. She realizes that even just stopping hating Bunny is a big achievement. Suddenly, Angelus kneels down in front of the girl and says that he is serious. He explains that the artifact was proof, and he'll give her a new one soon. She can break it at any time, and it'll come right away. Angelus says that he will give her such artifacts until she can live peacefully in this castle. Silver looks at the girl and asks if she understands. His brother reminds him that he will not forgive anyone who touches Ophelia's things. Hearing this, Bunny realizes that she is not being accused of stealing, and this is the first time she has received jewelry as a gift. However, the heroine does not understand what will happen when the real culprit is found. She thinks that if Fluvia, whom Angelus trusts so much, is declared guilty, the consequences will be terrible, because she is no different from the person who ruined Bunny's life. The main character thinks that she would like to see their faces when the truth comes out. Late that night, Bunny picks up the earring and thinks about how she hasn't spoken to Damien since his birthday, remembering that he was sick. She wonders if he has found a cure and is currently undergoing treatment, as the silence has been going on for too long. The main character remembers that the predictions are based on 8 hieroglyphs. Damien has 4 of his 8 symbols associated with the earth, meaning he must bury pain, suffering, and resentment within himself. The black-haired guy has gone through many difficulties and has a chance to become a significant figure in the future. However, now he is constantly humiliated, and there is still a long way to go. Until Damien's fate is revealed, he will have to overcome many trials. The boys pounce on Damien, calling him insolent and accusing him of letting people here freeze until they fall into eternal sleep. Suddenly, they hear a woman's voice calling for her baby, and they quickly leave. The woman runs up to the boy and says she's finally found him. He looks at her and realizes she's come. The man says that since she found him, they need to go inside because it's cold outside. Damien thinks the reason he and his ailing mother are still alive is because of this man who sometimes appears and protects them. He has the same black hair and eyes. The boy looks at the man and at first thinks that it would be nice if he became his father, but from his look, he understands everything. Damien realizes that he hates him as much as everyone else. He understands that his real father also abandoned them, and he does not need a replacement. The guy thinks that he doesn't want anyone to find his artifact, and remembers that he hasn't contacted her for a long time. The boy looks at this guy and thinks about how Bunny is doing. At this time, the main character looks at the earring and thinks that she has hope that this year will go well. In Damien's prophecy, the Ilgi and the Wilgi collide, strengthening unknown forces. This is a sign of early loss of parents, and perhaps this year his mother will suffer a misfortune that will greatly affect Damien. The protagonist understands that in her world this wouldn't matter, but here everything is different. She doesn't understand how a tiger could appear in a landfill. The girl looks at the artifact again and thinks that everything will be fine, but immediately regrets that she got so deeply involved in everything. Bunny thinks she just wants to make sure the guy is okay and warn him to stay somewhere safe. The protagonist realizes she can't leave this place yet because of the Duke. She needs him to let down his guard so she can move freely. Bunny understands that she needs to get through this year calmly, and that the guy needs to live too. The next day, Angelus declares that from now on, he will personally take charge of her education. Hearing this, the main character thought she'd have to see his face every day now. She immediately said she could refuse, because nothing bad would happen. The girl looked at the young gentleman and assured him that she did not want to take up his precious time. The guy replied that he'd already made a slot for her in his schedule. At that moment, the lady realized she didn't have much of a choice anyway. The young gentleman inquired about her progress in her studies. The girl realized he was indeed planning to teach and wondered if he felt responsible for the Viscount's affair. She decided to accept everything as it was. The guy asked how many letters from the main book she knew and added that later they would discuss the international situation and the culprit of the war. The main character didn't understand why he was teaching her this, because he couldn't help but know that an innocent child had become a scapegoat. Angelus said there are no accidents in the world and everything has two sides, like a coin. He declared that she must be able to see the essence of things. Bunny thought he was talking about himself too. She couldn't understand why Damien was the culprit of the war and why the truth couldn't be told, so she mentioned Trust Day. The young gentleman replied that everyone had heard about it, as the story had been spread far and wide. He added that there was indeed a cause for the war, but it wasn't the child, but his mother. The girl was surprised how an ordinary person could start a war if it was fought because of magicians and witches. The guy smiled and calmly said that she was not ordinary at all. Angelus explained that the royal family of mages were not ordinary people. Kazen was the kingdom of a dark clan with black hair and eyes, and Wana was the princess of a fallen country and the cause of the war. Hearing this, the main character remembered the words of the head of the Dark Brigade that he stole an artifact from the palace, but did not specify from which one. She realized it could have belonged to an aristocrat who had visited the palace. In that instant, everything clicked into place. These were the princess's earrings. Damien was her son, and the woman from the dump was Wana herself. The young master reported that the Kaizen kingdom had joined the mages even before the Great War. Angelus revealed that Princess Wana had received orders to divide the continent and had approached the crown prince of the kingdom of Abyss. Bunny realized that the crown prince was Emperor Ryan I, who united the north. The girl realized that Damien was a prince, and it was obvious. Angelus reported that Kazen had been completely defeated, disintegrated, and the royal family had been beheaded. The girl immediately asked if Wana had survived. She estimated Damien's age and realized the pregnancy had occurred after the peace. The boy added that His Majesty had saved Wana. Bunny asked him why he did it. Angelus replied that rumor had it he genuinely loved her. The girl thought it sounded cruel because the woman he loved lived in the slums and her son was called the culprit of the war. The lady said that if he knew the truth, then the imperial family knew it too. The young man confirmed, adding that only the palace, the Kreddles, and the temple knew. Bunny didn't understand why the prince continued to be called the culprit of the war and asked about it. Angelus told her not to think about it and to take it as a lesson if she didn't want to face a sad future. The girl realized that the palace would take action before the story reached the common people. The imperial court would definitely intervene. She realized that this didn't mean she cared about Damien. They'd probably just quietly get rid of him. Angelus said that Wana was taken into custody for her protection, but was later either released or escaped by deceiving the guards. He added that there was a version about her abduction by the remaining residents of Kaizen, and asked who, in her opinion, freed her. Bunny replied that she didn't know, but she thought it was the one who wished for Wana and her unborn child to fall into eternal sleep. The guy asked why. The girl explained that the child's birthday was a day of prophecies, and that was when it was revealed. The prophecy said that a cursed child with black hair and eyes was the cause of the war. Bunny suggested that the kidnapping could have been arranged by the Empress since she was cunning and interested in this. The Abyss royal family is the only one where polygamy and polyandry are permitted due to the divine power of the blood. The temple turned a blind eye to this for the sake of preserving the family line, and the emperor used marriage alliances to unite the North. The main character said that after the founding of a country, power is always unstable, and even the only empress should be on guard. Princess Wana became a threat because her child had the right to inherit. If the emperor acknowledged a woman with a child, the other wives would feel threatened and turn away from the empire. Bunny noted that the kidnapping of the pregnant Wana and the publication of the prophecy could only have been done by a person with great power. Angelus looked at her and realized that she was an unusually smart child, something he had never thought about before. He thought that with a real professor she would love studying. The guy admitted that he was wrong and added that now many believe that the Empress is involved in everything. Angelus said that two influential families had already supported the crown prince, while the Kreddles remained neutral. Bunny thought that the Empress might still have been involved, since children were often used as a means of pressure. She did not understand whether it was now possible to ignore the threat to the right of inheritance. The girl decided that whoever declared Damien the culprit of the war was annoyed not to receive news of his immersion into eternal sleep. The main character realized that to escape the empire, she needed the support of someone equal in strength, otherwise she would become a toy in the hands of others. Bunny realized that if he didn't become emperor, he would become a beggar. He was called the Fourfold Arsenal because of his 4 signs. With the signs of fire, water, iron, and wood, his influence will grow without end. With intelligence, talent, and leadership, he should have become a ruler with many followers. Bunny thought he was truly the perfect emperor, a hidden prince of noble blood. She knew that he was destined to be the only one worthy of the throne, and perhaps that was what troubled her. The main character realized that Damien is the one she needs, and there might not be a second chance. Bunny decided that she had to hold on to him at any cost and be sure to save him. The young lady told the maid to call a suitable designer. She explained that they needed an unpopular salon and a designer they could contact directly. The maid said she understood. Bunny added that there was no need to give her last name and thought that she hadn't expected to spend Angelus's money that way. The maid asked if she wanted to try on the dress. The girl replied that the fabric didn't matter, as the dress would be studded with small diamonds. The main character decided to avoid known stones so that the master could not be tracked by them. She thought that this was the price of wealth, and told the designer to tell her to make the dress shine like the starry sky. Bunny realized that the maid was an excellent judge of character and trusted her without asking unnecessary questions. The girl said she was going to get into trouble. Candace was surprised, and the lady asked her to understand first. When Ruby entered, Bunny asked about the wandering wizard who had appeared in the duchy. Ruby explained that such mages travel without purpose and do not serve noble houses. She asked if the lady was interested in this too, and Bunny thought that she didn't need the magician, but his artifact. The main character realized that escape was impossible without magic, and she needed movement and extraction spells. She decided that using the Credle artifact would be like running away with a beacon. Ruby described a mage with pink hair, beryl eyes, and a strong aura. She added that he had defeated the bear, but Bunny asked him to tell her about his magic. Ruby said she didn't know the details, and Bunny thought that wandering mages looked like bards. The main character realized that there was no time, and there might not be another chance. She asked where exactly this magician was, and whether it was possible to find out. At this time, the boy from the dump saw his wounded uncle. Damien asked what happened when he noticed the blood. The man said that Mrs. Juana had been caught and told the boy to run. He asked for Juana's protection and fell into eternal sleep. The boy thought that he should run after his mother, but he didn't know where. At this time, Bunny learned that Angelus was calling her and thought that the Credles were unbearable. She asked if he was looking for her. He answered in the affirmative and offered her a new artifact. Bunny thanked her, and Angelus noted how much she resembled Ophelia. He realized that he was to blame for forcing the child to smile and decided that it was enough to simply protect her. Angelus thought that if Ophelia had had such an artifact earlier, the disaster could have been avoided. He decided that he would not allow Bunny to repeat her fate. The main character realized that the bracelet allows her to be tracked, which means wearing it is dangerous. The next day, she went out into the city and found herself at the Credle Ministry of Magic. She saw the man, and from his facial features, she realized that he was patient and easy to win people over. Bunny decided that he could be trusted and easily deceived, so she invited him to her place. The man asked her what she was doing there. The girl inquired about instantaneous travel magic. The magician replied that movements were possible subject to agreements and offered assistance. He got scared, saying that it was forbidden outside the castle, but the girl assured him that it would not last long. Bunny promised a generous payment, but the man was afraid of the first Duke's wrath and being plunged into eternal sleep. The magician said that he remembers the events of 3 years ago and cannot speak. The main character realized that mentioning the curse or its existence could result in losing her life. She connected it with Ophelia's curse and wondered if Angelus was involved. The mage said it was dangerous outside the temple, but Bunny assured him he could track the scroll. She added that the young Duke was too busy and had not visited her for a long time. Bunny reminded him that she had survived in the dump alone, but the mage said that was not the case. She assured that it would only be for an hour, even if they started looking for her. The magician asked why she was looking like that, and Bunny thought he was easily fooled. She decided that it would be easy to find the magician in the hotel. Rumors had even reached the castle. Suddenly, she was asked if she was looking for a wizard. The man with pink hair introduced himself as the wandering mage, Mewtwo. Bunny took in his features: wide eyebrows, a straight nose, and large eyes. The magician suggested singing or telling about his exploits. He said that he was ready to fulfill any request because she had come a long way. The girl thought he was flirting, mistaking her for a rich lady. She realized that he was generous, but would not betray others. Bunny said he was easy to talk to, and he asked her what she wanted. She asked for 5 scrolls of movement and 10 artifacts, specifying the type of magic and the time frame. The girl added that she needed appearance-changing magic that worked while moving. The magician refused to take on dangerous tasks, but Bunny reminded him about the bear. He replied that it was just an animal. Bunny gave him an advance, not counting the stones. She said she had 3 more pockets of the same stones. Hearing this, the magician declared that he was ready to fulfill any order. The preparations took almost the entire day, and Bunny realized that escaping a second time would be more difficult. She decided the main thing was to make sure Damien was okay. She soon learned that the boy was alive and warned that there were those who wanted to put him into eternal sleep. Bunny asked how he knew about the danger, and he said he just wanted to live and thank her. Damien reported that he had found the rabbit constellation,